What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Limited Resources. This is episode number 475. My name is Marshall. I'm one of your Limited Resources, and joining me on the line all the way from Denver, Colorado, it's Luis Scott-Vargas. Luis, did we manage to take away the soundboard from you this week? Not technically.
We did not, but I have promised that I will be as professional as the show requires.
That is so not what we said. Man, he's been pushing these stupid I can't even start the show properly because you keep hitting that buzzer and the bat. Anyway, welcome to the Ravnica Allegiance Set Review Show. Yay! It is now time for the kind of our hallmark show for each set. This is Set Review. We're going to be covering every common and uncommon in depth from Ravnica Allegiance. And boy, there's a lot of cards here, all big sets these days. And of course, being a gold set, there's a lot to talk about. So we're going to get into it as quickly as possible. First, our sponsor, channelfireball.com. That's where you want to go to get everything Ravnica Allegiance. You can pre-order if you're listening right when the show went up, or you can just order it depending on when you're actually hearing this, as well as everything else you need Magic related. They're going to have it at Channel Fireball. They're going to get it shipped out to you quickly. They stand by their product, great customer service over at CFB. And while you're there, free content right on the front of the page. Boom. You can watch videos and read articles from some of the best players in the world, all with the goal that this show has, which is to help you improve at Magic so that you can enjoy it the most. Please do check out channelfireball.com. And of course, you can sponsor the show directly via Patreon. Patreon.com/limited resources is how you want to do that. Look, you get some cool bonuses. In fact, one of the tiers, you even get the unedited version of the show, which will include some serious nonsense before we got started on this one, and a whole bunch of other cool stuff over at Patreon. We really want to say thank you to each and every person who supports us on Patreon. It means a lot, and it is one of the big reasons why we get to keep doing LR week after week. So thank you so much. If this show helps you, that's where to go to help give back. Luis, common and uncommon set review show, which means, of course, we will be giving these cards grades.
Yes, let's talk about the grades. We're going to start at the top with the A's. These are the bombs, the game winners, cards that are good in many situations, especially when behind, and just the best cards in the set, as well as hyper-efficient spells. So you got cards like Doom Whisperer and Niv-Mizzet Perun from Guilds of Ravnica. Mm-hmm. Next, you have B. These are cards that actively pull you towards their colors, headliners for a set, and reasons to be, in this case, a particular guild. Solid removal, and a lot of the uncommon bombs fall here too. Cards like Night Veil Sprite, Goblin Banneret, Dimir Spybug, and Sunhome Stalwart. Next up, we have C. These are playables. The Pawns of Limited. They're fairly interchangeable, and you need some amount of them to make up your deck. These are cards like Darkblade Agent, Blade Instructor, Ornery Goblin, basically just your average card that goes in your deck. We have also Ds. Ds are sometimes playable, but you prefer not to run them. They're mediocre or junky cards. Maybe situational, maybe you have a high setup cost, and when they make the cut, you're very unhappy. These are cards like Goblin Locksmith, Wary Okapi, 10th District Guard, and Ladev Guardian. F. These are unplayable in virtually all scenario or cards that have incredibly narrow ranges. These are cards like Vicious Rumors or Wand of Vertebrae. We have two additional categories. The first is sideboard. These are cards that rarely, if ever, make the main deck, but can be very powerful out of the sideboard, assuming we still have one after our best of one overlords come and take all our stuff away. We've got a separate grade for these since they're usually an A or a B coming out of the sideboard and an F in the main deck. Cards that destroy artifacts or enchantments like Crushing Canopy are generally a good example of such. And we've got Build Around. These are cards that on their own, not particularly good. You need other cards to help make them work. And these are cards like Divine Visitation or Guild Summit. So Sideboard and Build Around, they'll get their grade among the letter grades, but we'll specify when that is.
That's right. Now, we, of course, use these grades as not the final say on these cards.
No. So these grades are, as you like to say, a punctuation mark on our comments. Our comments are really going to kind of describe how we see the card playing out, what uses we see, what you need to make it good, what might make it bad. Basically anything we think is interesting or relevant about the card. And then the grade kind of helps you center all that and, summarizes everything. But a grade by itself is not going to tell the whole story. So, we highly recommend listening to the details as well.
That's right. Now, what we're going to do, again, we do this similarly to how we did the Guilds of Ravnica set review, which is that we're actually going to be going over a guild and then one of the colors of that guild and then another guild. So guild meaning the gold cards, because those ones are really going to set the tone for what the guild is doing. And since this is a guild-centric set, there's 5 of them. We're going to go through each and every one of them and then fill in the gaps with the colors as we see fit. And then after that, we'll do the colorless cards and that kind of stuff. So we're going to start off with Azorius this time. And with the gold Azorius cards, the first card is Azorius Knight Arbiter. And this is a 5-drop. It's 3 white-blue for a 2/5 vigilant human knight. This is common, and it can't be blocked.
I like this card quite a bit.
Me too.
5 mana 2/5 might look a little dorky. It's like in the Wishcoin Crab space of things. But 5 mana 2/5 that has A, vigilance, and B, can't be blocked means it's going to defend the ground very well and just give you a nice little clock. 2 points a turn is more than enough to close out the game. Mm-hmm. So any card that can play double duty like that is a card that is looking pretty good in my book, because as a control deck, I would look at this card as a way to survive, and it's for free, essentially a win condition. So
yeah, also I want to keep an eye on the Azorius cards because I assume this is a controlling guild, but there are a lot of flyers and some tempo cards, and we might have a blue-white skies deck here, and this might be kind of the is-it of this set, meaning that there might be 2 different builds or 2 different directions that you can go, and this card is beautiful in a deck like that. It holds down the ground and still gets in for damage.
Yeah, I think that the Knight Arbiter is going to be a great way to lock up the board and control, or a great way to top out your curve and aggro. Imagine if you get your opponent to 10 and this is your 5-drop.
Totally. They can't race it.
Trouble. It's not like they can kill it very easily either. So I would give Azorius Knight Arbiter, I think, a C+.
C+, right? I don't think it's going to creep into the B range, but Vigilance plus Unblockable, I don't think I've ever seen that combo. And then 5 toughness is really great.
So Azorius Knight Arbiter gets a C+.
Yeah, next is Azorius Skyguard. This one is an uncommon. It's 4 white-blue for a 3/3 flying first strike human knight. So 6 mana 3/3 flyer. It does have first strike, which is nice. But get this. Creatures your opponents control get -1/-0.
All right, right off the bat, I'm going to tell our listeners that line of text is better than it looks. Creatures your opponents control get -1/-0 is really effective text. And every card that we've seen that on, I think, has been underrated. There was a couple of versions of this in the Shards of Alara block, and there was like a 5 mana 2/5 that had this ability and a 4 mana artifact that had this ability. Mm-hmm. Both of them were criminally underrated because it doesn't look all that good, but it really wreaks havoc on your opponent's ability to either attack you or even defend themselves when they have, creatures trying to block your creatures. So this card's better than it looks. It doesn't look very good, right? 6 mana 3/3 is not exactly the stats you're looking for, but that ability holds a lot of weight. So I would give Azorius Skyguard a C+.
Yeah, I'm going to give it a B-. I think everything you said is true, and it's already on a creature that seems to fit into the theme.
Yeah, I could actually go with B-. Sure, that works for me.
All right, next is, they're calling it information campaign or public service announcement. It's called Dovin's Acuity. It's 1 white-blue for an enchantment. And when it enters the battlefield, you gain 2 life and you draw a card. And whenever you cast now this is important, instant spell during your main phase, you may return Dovin's Acuity to its owner's hand. So this reminds you of Disinformation Campaign, but I will mention, let's not compare them directly because I think Disinformation Campaign is better. But is this card good on its own? Because Disinformation Campaign is not relevant to the discussion, and you don't want to fall into that trap of saying, well, this isn't as good as another thing that I know, therefore I don't like it. This card actually looks like it's quite strong on its own to me.
Yeah, this is a fine card. It's not a bomb the way, Disinformation Campaign was, but it is a good card. I think that the average Azorius deck will include this card. It's not a card I'm really looking to take super early, but I could see setting up a control deck if you have like 1 or 2 of these and you can get 6 or 7 instants, which doesn't seem impossible given there's a lot of them because of Addendum. And using this as your card draw engine, the extra life really does matter.
Yeah, it really does. And the ability, the fact that you get the card back, like in your worst case scenario, it's like a pretty severe tempo hit, but you get the 2 life and the card back. Even if you never bring it back to your hand, that floor isn't a disaster. You wouldn't include it, voluntarily, but with the upside that like you said, this could just become an engine. I think it becomes quite good. I also had a chance to play with this at the pre-release, and it did. It performed. It was really, it was super solid, and I was able to turn it into that engine that we were talking about. Also, it works great with Addendum, and that's just a nice bonus. So, Dovin's Acuity. I'm actually tempted to go pretty high on this. I'm going to give it a B minus. That might end up being a little bit high, but I really liked it, and I think it's going to pull its weight in the format.
I like Dovin's Acuity at B minus. I think that the card plays nicely with what Azorius is trying to do and is a powerful output if you can get it to work.
Right. Next card is High Alert. This is another uncommon. This one's an enchantment for 1 white blue. Each creature you control assigns combat damage equal to its toughness rather than its power. Azorius Knight Arbiter. Creatures you control can attack as though they didn't have Defender. And this is a little weird, but you can pay 2 blue-white to untap a creature.
And I not really get this untap a creature.
Well, what is that for?
There's another. There's a white common that has it's veteran of the 10th district that has untap target creature when you attack with it, and I don't really
what is that?
What's going on there? But this card doesn't look particularly good. It's a build around, I think, clearly because you need a bunch of creatures with high toughness, and I guess you could combine it with some defenders, but it doesn't really look like a particularly large payoff.
Yeah, there's probably like a build around C. I mean, there seems to be some things that you could do with it, but the cost of having to play a card that doesn't do anything, like if you play this on its own, literally nothing happens. You have to have creatures on the battlefield that have higher toughness than their power and or have Defender to make this thing do anything at all. That's a very high setup cost.
Yeah, I don't think High Alert's going to get there. I think Builder on C is about right, where I suspect you could go through the entire format, draft it a lot, and still never make a High Alert deck.
Yeah, I agree. Next is Law Mage's Binding. Here's some business. 1 blue-white for an enchantment. It's common. And this is, by the way, your common removal spell for Azorius. It's Flash Aura that enchants a creature, and it's a rest. The creature can't attack, block, and its activated abilities can't be activated. Boom.
Yeah, this card is the real deal. I mean, it's a 3-mana removal spell, and it would be great even without Flash, but Flash means you can, take your time and decide when to cast it. Like, you're probably going to cast it on their 4/4, but you can just pass, and if you're playing as Gruul or even, anyone that touches red or green and has riot creatures, you might get to change your target, and that's a great upside. Yeah,
and that, I'm sure, is why this thing has Flash, by the way. Because when you play it, you're like, well, wait, this isn't I can't do this during combat to any effect. But yeah, if they play a riot creature and go haste, you can go Law Mage's Binding. Law Mage's Binding looks like a classic B to me. It's effectively unconditional removal, and it even happens to be good against utility creatures like Guild Mages. I'm in.
Yeah, Law Mage's Binding is a solid B. It's just efficient and just handles everything one way or another.
Next card, by the way, boy, this thing did some work for me at the pre-release. Senate Guild Mage is blue-white. This is, of course, the Azorius version of the Guild Mage here. Blue-white for a 2/2, human wizard at uncommon. The first ability is meh. It's white tap, you gain 2 life. It's not that bad, but, we had a similar ability on Swarm Guild Mage before, and it's like, okay, sure. But the next ability is awesome. It's blue, tap, loot, which is draw a card, then discard a card. That is super powerful.
Yeah, it's great because these 2 abilities are so complementary where if you have time, you can use the looting effect to sculpt your hand, not draw any excess lands or ditch situational cards. If you don't have time, you can often spend 1 mana to gain 2 life to buy yourself that time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Senate Guild Mage to me is the front runner for the best one. We don't see repeatable looting that often anymore in Limited. I mean, they have gone, we haven't seen a Merfolk looter in a long time. Yeah. And blue tap is definitely affordable. That's something I'm willing to pay for sure.
Yeah, so I would give Senate Guild Mage a B as well. I don't think it gets to B plus range though.
Okay, yeah, I like B for it as well. But boy, somebody sticks that card and they're gonna look at you and remember this is the guild that's all about instants. So like they're just gonna pass the turn back and they're gonna loot if they don't have to cast their spell. So B for Senate Guild Mage, really good. Next is the CCDD card. It's the Sphinx of New Prov. It's white, blue for a 4/3 flying Sphinx. Of course, it's uncommon. It also has Vigilance. So 4/3 flying Vigilance, kind of interesting. And then it's got the ability, spells your opponents cast that target Sphinx of New Prov cost 2 more to cast.
So this is not quite Nurgle Predator in a couple different ways, but it definitely is a card worthy of paying, double color, because if you play this on turn 4, your opponent's often not going to be able to kill it, just because it's a 4/3 flyer and anything that targets it costs 2 more. And then even later in the game, the extra 2 mana they have to spend is really good, while it being a 4/3 flying Vigilance means it does demand removal. So Sphinx is not unassailable. Your opponent can clearly play Law Mage's Binding on it for 5 mana, and that's not the end of the world. But if they don't have efficient removal, if they have one of the more expensive removal spells in the set, this can really get them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the one thing I don't like about it, just like at face value compared to the other CCDD cards, is that many of them get you a card worth of value just by simply having them enter the battlefield. And this one doesn't. This is more like a pesky threat that they have to deal with at some point. But the Vigilance to me is not amazing because it only has 3 toughness. So it's holding back like 2 2s. Okay, I'll take it if you're going to throw it in there, but that isn't like a big sticking point. Flying is, of course, awesome. That's, the best ability. I don't know. What do you want to grade it? Look, by the standards by which this cycle is, this is not over. I'm not particularly overwhelmed by this card. I'm kind of down on it.
I would still give it probably a B-. Okay. And that of course is incorporated in the casting cost. Like when you look at this card versus Law Mage's Binding, like if I was white, blue and had 3 guild gates, I'd probably rather have the Sphinx. It's just a very powerful card, but it's so much harder to cast that in a deck without good mana, rather have a slightly easier to cast card. So I would give Sphinx of New Prov a B-.
Okay. Yeah, sure. I'll join you on B-. I guess my hopes are really high for those. Next is Sphinx's Insight, perhaps the marquee common for this guild. It's 2 white, blue for an instant, and it says draw 2 cards. Okay, good start. Little expensive, but it's an instant. Addendum. If you cast a spell during your main phase, you gain 2 life.
This card
it adds up. Yeah, it adds up.
I mean, the life gain matters, right? Because these cards are clunky, and it's the kind of card, well, you don't want tons of cards that do nothing. Gaining 2 life means you can take like an extra hit from their 2-drop and not feel bad about it. So I don't think Sphinx's Insight is amazing, but the 2 life matters a lot.
Yeah, and I plan on playing a lot of copies of these over the course of the format. I think it's a C. I think this is just like a rock solid play.
I would give Sphinx's Insight just a straight up C.
Yeah. Next is Senate Griffin. Now, this is the hybrid card. There's 1 hybrid card for each guild as well. So this is 2 blue, white, or white. You can choose. It's 2 and 2 hybrid Azorius mana for a 3/2 flying Griffin at common. And when it enters the battlefield, you scry 1. Yeah. Nice.
Solid bit of value. This is in Azorius, a very easy to cast 4-drop, but it's still playable in Orzhov and Simic, and you'll be pretty happy to play it in those guilds. And a 3/2 flyer that scries 1 for 4 mana is just a good deal. So I think Senate Griffin gets a C+ here.
I do too. The scry 1 is really nice at any point that you cast it as well. And then as well as a hybrid card for each guild, they also, of course, get a split card. And these split cards have the same setup that the other ones did. They have a hybrid first half that's usually cheaper and not quite as potent. And then they have a guild-specific second half. So this one is called Depose Deploy. And Depose is 1 and an Azorius hybrid, so 1 in a white or 1 in a blue. And it's an instant that says tap target creature, draw a card. Fine. And then Deploy is 2 blue-white for an instant, and it says create 2 1/1 colorless Thopter artifact creature tokens with flying. Then you gain 1 life for each creature you control.
Yeah.
So, of course, it counts those 2 Thopters as well, so that can be a pretty significant bit of life gain, and it's an instant, so you can really mess with combat. I actually had 2 of these in the deck, in the Seal deck that I played, and I cast Depose a grand total of 1 time, and that was because I had onboard lethal. But otherwise, I played Deploy every single time.
Yeah, I would expect it to be about an 80-20 split.
Yeah.
And a lot of the 20% of the time you cast Depose, it's when you either have lethal that turn or you're just cycling on turn 2 because you don't want to miss your 3rd land drop.
Yeah, the only other time is if they have lethal.
Right. but if they have lethal, often Deploys can even do a better job of that. So this card's really powerful, though. I'm really liking all these Azorius cards. I would give this one a B as well.
Yeah, me too.
I think it's a very good first pick. It's also nice that if you take this first and ends up in Orzhov, you can just play it because you can cast Depose easily, and then you maybe have like 1 random Azorius Guildgate in your deck where you can cast Deploy if you get lucky, but the opportunity cost of having, Pressure Point, 1 in a white, tap a creature, draw a card in your deck is not very high.
Yeah, I agree. Boy, that's it for Azorius. Azorius looks really strong. The Sphinx of New Prov didn't really blow me away, but the Senate Guild Mage, the Law Mage's Binding are both excellent. The Senate Griffin's very good. Depose Deploys good too. And then I liked the Sphinx's Insight and the Acuity. So lots of good stuff here. That's going to move us to white. We're going to go through just the white commons and uncommons now. So the first one is called Angelic Exaltation. It's 3 and a white for an enchantment and uncommon. And it says whenever a creature you control attacks alone, it gets +X until end of turn, where X is the number of creatures you control.
Yeah, so this is a throwback to Exalted, of course.
Yeah.
I think this card's pretty good.
This is like the angel that was in UMA. It just gives it to whatever you do.
Sublime Archangel is a little better, but this is going to be good, I think, in most decks that have a good amount of creatures, which might seem obvious, but what I'm saying is you don't have to actually build a go-wide token deck for this to be powerful. You need basically two things to be true. One is you care about your opponent's life total, which some Azorius decks won't really, right? If you're a control deck, the fact that this kills them faster doesn't matter. You don't want a card like this in your deck.
Yeah, not
but
appealing.
If you care about your opponent's life totals, you're aggro or mid-range, and you have 14 or more creatures, something along those lines, this card's going to be good. It counts the creature you're attacking with, so it's at a floor +1/+1. It needs to be, I think, about +3/+3 before I'm pretty excited about the card. And that's not that hard to get, especially if you have afterlife creatures, which one way or another, kind of indicate you're going to have a board presence. So
yeah, totally.
I overall do like Angelic Exaltation. I would probably take a removal spell before I would take this card, because you don't know where you're going to end up. But in a deck that wants to attack, that has a bunch of creatures in it, this card is a good way to close out the game. It's especially good with evasion. Yeah,
and I mentioned it before, but there's definitely a possibility that Azorius has this Flyers deck rather than like the full control version, and Angelic Exaltation looks really good in that too.
That said, the rating is kind of tricky.
Yeah, I only want one of them in my deck no matter what.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah,
and it's the sort of thing where if your opponent has a lot of instant speed interaction, you could be getting set up to get you attack with the one creature every turn. Every turn they bounce or kill it, you never kill them.
Yeah. Also, it doesn't do much on defense or whatever, right? So,
well, I would say it does actually nothing on defense. Yeah.
Right. So that's kind of a knock as well. So, what do you want to give it? C+?
I like C+ for Angelic Exaltation, but the asterisk there is you probably don't want to take this early. This is the kind of card I would like to take in the middle to end part of the draft.
Yeah. Next is Archway Angel or Archway Angel. How would you say that?
I'd say it's Archway Angel, but I'm not sure.
Archway Angel. Yeah, I'm not sure either. Archway Angel is. I'm going to say Archway Angel because there is anyway, it's 5 and a white for a 3/4 flying angel at uncommon. And this is kind of cool and a little hint of some of what we can do in the format. When it enters the battlefield, you gain 2 life for each gate you control.
It's funny that we're going to get a new set of gate builder rounds, but these ones look pretty exciting. And I think part of evaluating these is what do the other ones look like? And we're going to get to all the common uncommon ones here, but they are pretty good. So
yeah,
I think,
and this one's pretty good too.
Oh yeah, if you can gain 4 off this, it's worth casting. If you can gain 6 or 8, it's really good because those decks are also often slow and behind on board. So
that's right.
This is a builder run card. I wouldn't take it early, but once I was in the gate deck, or if I had a kind of empty pack, or maybe thought I had cards that aimed towards the gate deck, this is like a builder on B. This could just be one of the best cards in your deck.
I like it too at build around B for Archway Angel. Next is Arrestor's Zeal. That is white for an instant at common. It says target creature gets +2/+2 until end of turn, but addendum, if you cast it during your main phase, that creature gains flying until end of turn.
I actually really like this card. This is just such a clean, good design, and I think it's quite powerful as well. So white for +2/+2 is kind of the standard, right? It took us a little bit to get over the fact that, combat chicks used to be 1 mana +3/+3, but it's been many years since that's been true. And this is kind of the benchmark right now. And the addendum is a really cool way to change how the card plays because early or mid game, this is a way to win a combat, right? This is your 3-drop crashes into theirs, you arrest a Zeal, play another 3-drop, you're ahead on board. Great. Late game, this is a way to just get 5 or 6 points of damage through when your opponent can't deal with a flyer. And that's really cool.
And it's for free. I mean, you're paying nothing for that additional.
Yeah, you're not really paying for it. We do kind of expect our 1 mana +2/+2 trick to have a little bonus somewhere. And so, whether that's your vampire getting first strike or you gaining 2 life. But in this case, I think the bonus is more than a little. This is a significant bonus because if you imagine you're playing against like an aggressive Azorius or Orzhov deck and you've stabilized, but they have like a 3/2 in play. Knowing this is a common, you just don't feel good at 5 life because they might just kill you with this.
Mm-hmm.
So
what do you want to give it?
A C.
C?
I mean,
yeah.
it's still a C, but I would play like a couple copies of this in any aggressive deck and be quite happy about it.
Next is Bring to Trial, which is 2 and a white for a sorcery at common, and it says exile target creature with power 4 or greater.
I think this card's just okay.
Yeah, me too.
It's 3
Are we main decking it? Like,
my inclination is to main deck 1 most of the time, and in sealed, I would main deck probably 2.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that seems right. And of course, if you're playing against Gruul or something, you're going to be
right.
quite stoked to have
Gruul
multiple.
or Rakdos, you're going to want to bring more, and even against Simic actually, because I think a lot of their adapt creatures end up just getting big enough. It's mostly a miss against Orzhov or Azorius, though it is worth noting that it exiles. So if you play against Afterlife and their creatures are somehow big enough to bring to trial, they don't get their Afterlife tokens.
Yeah, that's good. This is, to me, classic kind of conditional mediocre removal. It's fine. I agree with you. It's a sorcery. It's a sorcery, right? We're not talking about like a great spell here. It's probably in the D plus range for me. Maybe it's a C minus. Sure, I'll say C minus.
I think Bring to Trial is going to end up being a C minus.
Okay. Next is Civic Stalwart. That's 3 and a white for a 3/3. It's an Elephant Soldier at common, and it enters a battlefield. When it enters a battlefield, creatures you control get +1/+1 until end of turn.
Yeah, perfectly serviceable. We've seen this card printed under other names.
Yeah. And it's always been okay.
Yeah, it's always been fine. So the keys to note here are, yes, you want a lot of creatures in your deck, and you especially want to pay attention to your curve, because if you can cast this after playing a 2 and a 3, it doesn't just get 2 extra damage in, right? That's the easy way to think like, well, it gives +2/+2, so that's 2 extra damage. It also might let your 2/2 attack into their 3/3. So that's actually 3 damage off just that creature. And it might let your 3/3 attack past their 3/3 they would have otherwise blocked. So that's 4 damage, So
yeah.
The effect here is not small, but you also, you're not getting a fantastic card. It's a 4-mana 3/3. Those are just slightly below average. The vanilla test got updated, and 4-mana 3/3 is no longer the stat line we're happy about.
Okay. So where do you want it?
I would give Civic Stalwart a C.
It's a C, right? Just a solid C for the Stalwart. Next is Concordia Pegasus. Simple card. It's a common. It's a 1 and a white for a 1/3 with flying.
I'm not going to argue this gets anything but a C, but the 2-mana 1/3 flyer has been kind of a staple in a bunch of sets, and it tends to play quite well. So I'm pretty happy putting 1 or 2 of these in my deck.
Yeah. These are filler level cards, but they're always okay. C?
Yeah, I like C for Concordia Pegasus.
Yeah, kind of nothing too exciting there. Next is Exposed to Daylight. It's 2 and a white for an instant. Destroy target artifact or enchantment and scry 1. This is a common, and it's a sideboard card.
Yep, it's a sideboard card. Though traditionally you main deck one of these in sealed. I would imagine that's going to be true in this set as well.
Yeah, so we'll keep our eye out for stuff that it can do, but Exposed to Daylight, sideboard. Next is Forbidding Spirit. This one's pretty powerful. It's an uncommon. It's 1 white for a 3/3 Spirit Cleric. And when it enters the battlefield until your next turn, creatures can't attack you or a planeswalker you control unless their controller pays 2 for each of those creatures.
So this is a propaganda or ghostly prison for 1 turn, which is pretty good. So in a race, what this is going to do is it's going to force your opponent to take a turn off of casting spells if they want to attack, or to give up some damage if they want to cast spells. Both those are pretty good, given that a 3-mana 3/3 is, pretty good deal. That is above the curve in the vanilla test.
Especially for white.
I think that the casting cost being a little tough here, double white, is something that, isn't good, but the effect here is something you might not even want, or like it's the kind of effect that you might want to save till a little later. So I could often see not playing this on 3 if I have a different 3 to play, and just playing Forbidden Spirit on like turn 5 or 6 to try to get max value. Yeah,
it's a one-shot effect that can mess with races in like a significant way. You have a 3/3 body, plus they have to be selective. Some of the decks will simply ignore it and just pay if they're attacking with one big thing. But there's going to be decks that basically this says you don't really have any good attacks until the next turn, and that can matter. But the main gist of this, though, is that this is all tacked onto a 3/3 for 3 that you're
not really paying for the effect. So I don't think this card's fantastic or anything, but I think it'll make the cut in all your white decks, and you'll be pretty happy with it. I would give Forbidding Spirit a C+.
Yeah, I have it at B-. I just think 3/3 for 3 with upside, I'm in. That's good. Hazda Officer is next. It's 2 and a white for a 3/2 human soldier at common. When it enters the battlefield, target creature you control gets +1/+1 until end of turn. So it's the mini Civic Stalwart.
Yeah, it's kind of weird to have these two cards right next to each other.
It really is, yeah.
This card's not particularly good. I don't like 3/2s very much because they just trade down for 2 drops almost all the time. And the bonus here to go to 1 creature is just not a huge swing. So this looks like kind of mediocre filler to me. I would give Hazda Officer a D.
I think it's going to be a D as well. Yeah. Hazda Officer gets a D. Sorry, buddy. Impassioned Orator is 1 and a white for a 2/2. It's common, and whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you gain a life.
I like this card. It's just a good bit of value. 2 mana 2/2 that has an effect over the whole course of the game, is not a brick in the late game. I think Impassioned Orator is going to end up being, still filler or like an average, a C level card, but I would probably give it a C+.
Yeah, I'll give it a C. I like the way it fits into into both of Azorius' potential plans. As a control deck, you'll take the life gain plus the cheap play. And as the Flyers deck, usually your game plan takes a turn or 2 longer than your opponents to get online. And if you can buffer your life total in between, you can take over in the mid to late game. So Impassioned Order, C+. Next is Justiciar's Portal. This is 1 and a white for an instant at common. Exile target creature you control, then return that creature to the battlefield under its owner's control. It gains first strike until end of turn.
So the main thing you're going to want to do with this is combine it with good enter the battlefield effects because it re-triggers those. I don't like it that much as a way to ambush your opponent's creatures because not only does it run into the same thing as all the combat, the same perils as every combat trick, which is they can have a removal spell, their own combat trick. It also doesn't make your creatures bigger, so it's not making your 2/2 take out their 4/4. It's just making your 4/4 win in a fight against their 4/4 instead of just draw, which that's not all that appealing. It is decent to fight against removal spells, though. If they try to kill your creature, you just portal it and boop. So
yep. Yeah, I think it's fine. I think that people tend to think that these cards, that leaning on the flexibility of these cards makes them good, and I find that it makes them medium.
Yeah.
So I would give Justiciar's Portal a D or a D+. I don't think this is the type of card that you're just going to automatically put into your deck. I think you're occasionally going to run it if you have a good reason to.
I think when you want this, you'll be able to get 1 or 2 pretty easily, and not that many people are going to want this. So I would give Justiciar's Portal a D.
Yeah. Knight of Sorrows is next. It's 4 and a white for a 3/3 human knight at common. Knight of Sorrows can block an additional creature each combat, and this is our first instance of Afterlife. This one has Afterlife 1, so when it dies, you get a 1/1 flyer.
This card's okay.
Fine.
It's not spectacular because, again, it does cost 5, and it's small enough that it's not necessarily going to dominate the board, and your opponent's removal can often kill it, but Afterlife 1 goes a long way towards making a card playable.
Mm-hmm.
This strikes me as like a C-. Like, if you don't have other 5s, sure, you can play this on turn 5, you're not going to be embarrassed. But you don't really need to prioritize expensive cards because you almost always get enough of those. And as far as expensive cards go, this is near the bottom of the barrel.
Yeah, not super great. It just doesn't seem well set up for its abilities. It only has 3 toughness. If you block basically any 2 creatures, it's going to die. So you're not really doing great there. Ministrant of Obligation is next. It's 2 and a white for a 2/1 human cleric at uncommon. And it's simple. It has Afterlife 2.
Yeah, I like this card quite a bit.
Yeah, that's good.
This is one of the Afterlife cards where you're actually looking for ways to have it die because you want the 2/1/1s instead of just the 2/1. So it plays very nicely with sacrifice effects. Also, your opponent either has the choice of not attacking you on the ground, which if you're a defensive deck is good, or not blocking this, which if you're an aggressive deck is good. So you're pretty much happy no matter what happens when you cast Ministrant of Obligation. That makes this just a B for me.
Yeah, same thing. B. I love having expendable creatures like that too. This next card's a lot worse. It's 1 and a white for a 3/1. It's called Prowling Caracal, and that's it. It's 1 and a white for a 3/1 common.
I'm not into it. Afterlife tokens kind of just trade for this straight up. It's a 2-drop that trades for any 2-drop or 1-drop that they happen to have. I just haven't thought the 2-mana 3/1, common has been all that good in the last bunch of sets, and we've seen it almost every set at this point. So I would give Prowling Caracal a D. It is a 2-drop. If you need a 2-drop, you can put that in your deck. It'll trade for a card, but you can just do so much better these days.
Yep, a D for Prowling Caracal. Next is Rally to Battle. It's 3 and a white for an instant. It's uncommon, And it says creatures you control get +1/+3 until end of turn. Untap them.
Untap them is a really important two words to put on this card, because sometimes when you have a card like this, your opponent like attacks with everything, or so they attack with everything, and you're like, oh, I'm going to play around their overrun type effect. I'm just not going to block, and I'm going to attack them back. Rally for Battle doesn't really make the plan work because it untaps all the creatures. So if you attack them back, they just cast Rally, untap it, and still get the benefit of it. Mm-hmm. Or you make like a couple blocks, then they rally, and then all the creatures are untapped for the next turn anyway. So it's a pretty good combination of effects, and +1/+3 means their creatures are very likely to survive, even if they don't make them that much bigger.
Yeah, the thing I want though is I want to be able to kill my opponent with this, and it's so hard with only +1 tough power. It just doesn't. It feels like a defensive card primarily, and I don't like cards like that.
I wouldn't call it defensive, but it's more for creature versus creature combats than it is for straight up races. Mm-hmm. Like if you're racing ground creatures against their flyers, this is not going to help you all that much. It's pretty good if you're racing flyers against their ground creatures, though.
Yeah, do you remember Inspired Charge? I think it was called. It was 2 white. You didn't get to untap your creatures, but they got +2/+1. Like that card seems way better than this.
I think this is better than Inspired Charge.
Okay.
Because I think that the untap effect means that it's going to be really hard for your opponent to play around, where you attack and represent this and they don't block, then on their next turn, they're kind of still faced with the same decision where they have to attack with smaller amounts or none of their creatures in order to not get hit by Rally. I'm not saying this card's great, but Inspired Charge isn't great either.
Okay, yeah, that's true. So what would you like to give it? Because I have it like a D. I'm not particularly interested in this card.
I think Rally to Battle is going to be like a C. But you do need a pretty creature-heavy deck to play this. Like you can't just put this in one of your 10 creature control decks. So again, if you have like the 14 or 15 creature deck, then I think Rally to Battle is going to more than earn its slot.
Okay, so I have C or D. You have C for Rally to Battle. Next is Resolute Watchdog. It's white for a 1/3 hound at uncommon with Defender, but you can pay a mana and sacrifice it to give target creature you control indestructible until end of turn.
I like this card a lot.
Yeah, me too.
It does protect you early. 1/3 is going to block a lot of the 2-drops that are out there. And then later in the game, it just means that it can trade for 1 mana for any removal spell or, in combat whenever they try to kill one of your big creatures. So that good early, good late. Pretty annoying card to play against too, because the old threat of activation is just sitting there, and your opponent's often not going to want to spend 4 mana on a kill spell when you have this just waiting to protect your creature.
Love it. I just like the view of the dog just sitting there, like, what are you going to do? Fire off a removal spell. Yeah, I like the fact that it blocks early as well. C+ for Resolute Watchdog. Is it better than that? Is it a B?
I think it's probably like a B-. I think it's just going to be a really good amount of value. It reminds me of Siren Stormtamer quite a bit.
Okay. And yeah, it might even be better, at least for limited. Okay. I like that. B- for Resolute Watchdog. Good boy. Sentinel's Mark is 1 white for an enchantment aura at uncommon. It has flash and enchants a creature. The creature gets +1/+2. And if it has addendum, if you cast it during your main phase, the creature gets lifelink until end of turn.
This card has a lot going on. It's going to be a very effective trick. And if you win a combat with this, you get a leftover of +1/+2 in Vigilance, which is huge. Like imagine, the classic, like my 3/3 rumbles into yours. They block and you're like Sentinel's Mark, and so all of a sudden it's like you now have a 4/5 Vigilance in play and you killed my creature for 2 mana. And if you do need to cash it in for lifelink, you give up the combat trick aspect, but you're like, okay, Sentinel's Mark, my 4/3 flying Vigilant Sphinx, attack for 5 lifelink. So I'm pretty high on this card. Where do you have it?
I don't have it that high. I don't know. +1/+2 for 2 mana seems reasonable. I like the ability to protect my creature from burner in combat. Maybe, what if I just viewed it as a combat trick with upside? Is that fair?
Well, kind of, but it's got 2 separate upsides. One is that it gives a permanent bonus of +1/+2 in Vigilance.
Right.
And the other is that you can play it as a lifelink aura and get a pretty good turn out of that as well.
It's a lot of upside.
Yeah, I think so. I think
C+ for Sentinel's Mark?
I think it's a B. I think that this is going to be one of the uncommons you're going to just be really happy to have in your deck. Like,
yeah, it does feel like it's flexible enough.
If you play your 2/2 for 2 and they play their 2/2 for 2 and you attack and they just block because, that's almost always what happens because you're fine trading for a combat trick. And your combat trick is Sentinel's Mark. Now you have a 3/4 in play.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's
and
great.
They already lost a creature. You paid 2 mana to kill their creature and give your creature this permanent bonus. I think that in a race, getting to slap this on your 4 or 5 power creature to gain a just big chunk of life, I think Sentinel's Mark is just going to be one of the premium uncommons.
Okay, I'll go to B-. You talked me into it. That sound. I'm in for all the things that you just said. Next is Sky Tether. This is kind of interesting. It's like super demotion. It's white for an enchantment aura at uncommon. It enchants a creature. The creature has defender and then also loses flying.
Yeah.
If it happened to have that.
So this is strictly better, just about strictly better. Guard duty gives a creature defender, but also loses flying. And what I like about that is it broadens the range of where you want this card, because the two main places I see this being good is in a control deck that doesn't care about attacking, and in a deck that cares about attacking with flyers. And in both cases, it's really effective removal.
Really good. Cheap, super cheap. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Sky Tether. I think it's really good.
Yeah, I would give Sky Tether a B just for efficiency. Note that if you end up with just like a normal mid-range or a deck that wants to attack on the ground, this card's not very good. So it's not a card that just goes into every single deck, unlike a lot of removal spells. But Sky Tether is still going to perform fantastically.
Yeah, it feels like a really good Azorius card. Next is Spirit of the Spires. It's 3 and a white for a 2/4 spirit at uncommon. It has flying, and it gives all other creatures you control with flying +0/+1. So vanilla test or French vanilla test, that's pretty good, right? A 2/4 flyer for 4 is like, sure, I'm in. And then this one also happens to pump up your other flyers, of which you will actually probably have quite a few. Spirit of the Spires to me seems very solid.
Yeah, it's quite a solid card. I think this might be the like the 4th white uncommon in a row I want to give a B to. But I think Spirit of the Spires really is going to deliver. It makes making your 1/1 tokens into 1/2s is pretty big. Making your kind of front heavy Azorius flyers into slightly tougher creatures is also pretty good. And it's a 4-mana 2/4 flyer, which you always just put in your deck. So yeah, I think Spirit of the Spires does get a B.
Yeah, it's a B. Easy B for Spirit of the Spires. Next is Summary Judgment. It is 1 and a white for an instant at common. It does 3 damage to target tapped creature, and it is an instant. I'll remind you of that. But it does have addendum if you cast it during your main phase. Instead, it does 5 damage.
I like Summary Judgment. It's
Me too.
Not the best when you're an aggressive deck, because, again, it has to be tapped, so it has to be attacking you. But it's a 2-mana removal spell that kills most things they can attack you with, and then if you want to take a hit first, it can kill basically everything. So I think that this is just a solid removal spell, and I wouldn't mind starting with this, even if in some aggressive decks it might not end up making the deck.
I like this. I like this card a lot. The ability for 2 mana to kill something huge is nice, and then the fact that you still get to play it, during combat or while your opponent's attacking you, and still kill a large percentage of the creatures that are actually hitting you is really good. So I like Summary Judgment a lot, but it's still not unconditional. It's not great removal, but I think it's like C+ level.
I would give Summary Judgment a C+.
Next is Syndicate Messenger, 3 and a white for a 2/3 flying bird. So I guess definitely has flying, and it's common with Afterlife 1.
This card's good. It's funny because I think it loses a little because of the comparison to Parhelion Patrol from Guilds of Ravnica.
Which is better.
I think that even though it doesn't really make sense to compare the two because they're in different formats, people are still going to remember the other one. It's kind of like Disinformation Campaign. I think Syndicate Messenger is good. Part of the problem with a 4-mana 2/3 flyer is that you spent 4 mana on a card, and when they kill it, you don't get much. This card does give you a 1/1, which does change the equation quite a bit. So, yeah,
it seems fine. This to me, I don't know. Afterlife's a little bit tricky to judge, but I mean, I assume that this is a C+ or a C. I don't think it's going to go much higher than that.
I think Syndicate Messenger is going to end up being probably just a straight up C. Because, again, the 4-drop slot is not one you have trouble filling. But if you don't have good 4s, this is going to fill out the curve. Because, I mean, imagine you're playing an aggressive deck and you've got a removal spell in your hand and your opponent just plays this on turn 4. A lot of the time that's going to be pretty annoying because you're like, well, I can kill it, but then they end up with a 1/1 that either chumps so they gain 2 to 4 life, or I have a 2/1 in play, so now that 1/1 is just blanking my 2/1.
Yeah, that's work. I mean, that's a, for a common, that's a card you have to respect. So Syndicate Messenger gets a C. 10th District Veteran is next. She's 2 and a white for a 2/3 human soldier at common with vigilance, and whenever 10th District Veteran attacks, untap another target creature you control.
I don't know what the 10th district is, but they're not sending us their best because...
No, they're really not.
So
might be time to retire their 10th District Veteran. I mean, this card's fine, but it's nothing special.
No, this is just a straight up D. I don't really understand the untapping thing. Like, is there something going on in the set that really rewards that? Who knows? I certainly don't. And a 3-mana vigilance is just not particularly good.
Oh, man. Yeah. So...
I mean, I looked at all the white and blue cards to try to figure out if there's like a theme there that I'm missing, but I didn't see one. And I guess there might be some Orzhov nonsense going on, but I don't even see that either. So it doesn't seem particularly obvious to me why I would want to untap another creature I control. I mean, I guess just 2 creatures having vigilance is nice.
Fine, or maybe guild mage combos, but I mean, none of these are like none of the commons are doing these things. So anyway, 10th District Veteran is like a C or a C minus, right? It's just a boring 3-drop.
I would give it a D. I think
it's that bad. Okay, I'm with you. 10th District. I mean, something has to get a D, right?
Not particularly good stats here.
Yeah, definitely. Next is Twilight Panther, white for a 1/2 cat spirit. Is it dead? At common, and you can pay black. Oh, a little crossover here to give it death touch until end of turn.
I like this card. It's going to end up trading a lot of the time, but your opponent does end up trading something that costs more, even if you factor in that you paid 1+1. And it's just a nice defensive option. It's a way to get on the board early. I don't have a problem with playing the Twilight Panther.
Now, these are all under the assumption that you're Orzhov.
Oh, yes.
Right?
You have to be Orzhov to play this card. It's wildly unplayable if you're not Orzhov.
Right. I mean, and by the way, while we're doing comparisons, like Hired Poisoners, like LOL. But anyway, sure, it's like a C minus, I guess. Maybe a C in Orzhov.
I would give it a C. I think it's just a solid playable in Orzhov.
Yeah. And probably doing what it wants to do. Last white card is Watchful Giant. It's 5 and a white for a 3/6 giant soldier at common. And when it enters a battlefield, you get a 1/1 white human creature token.
Yeah, Watchful Giant.
It's a lot of stats.
It's a lot of stats. It's got to be eminently replaceable. There's just no reason to expect that you need to pick up one of these 6-drops. But if at the end of the draft you don't have something on the top of your curve, I think this will do the trick. So I would give Watchful Giant probably like a C minus.
Yeah, it's a D plus C minus type card. Kind of has the earmarks for that, even though there's nothing wrong with it. But in the way that they design sets now, this is the bottom end of the power level. Most of the cards are just kind of good. Yeah. Okay, so let's move on now to Azorius. This is, of course, the white-black guild.
Azorius?
And Azorius. Orzhov, thank you. The white-black guild, Orzhov, or as Luis says, Orzhov. Basilica Bellhaunt is our first card, and this happens to be the CCDD uncommon. So white, black for a spirit. This one is a 3/4. Okay. And when it enters the battlefield, each opponent discards a card. I like that. And you gain 3 life.
Yeah.
Good.
This is more what I want out of my CCDD card. This at any point, this card is going to be a solid effect on the board, and you gain 3 even if they have no cards in your hand. Like those 2 clauses aren't connected. Mm-hmm. And so it's just always a 2-for-1 if they have a card in hand. So I think Basilica Bellhaunt is just excellent.
Me too. To me, it's like a B. Again, like I mentioned it before, I like the ones that give me value just for having it hit the battlefield. And while this one is just a 3/4, like it has no abilities when it's on the battlefield, I really like the enters the battlefield trigger. And also I like the ability to try to re-trigger that, like with the bounce spell thing that we just talked about. The just this year's portal, like here's one of the targets, right? I can make you discard a card at instant speed. So Basilica Bellhaunt for me is a B.
I like Basilica Bellhaunt at B as well.
Yeah, I mean, these type of cards would be higher, except for that they're white, black.
White, black, I think it'd be a pretty easy B+.
Exactly. Next is Final Payment. This is a removal spell for Orzhov. It's white, black for an instant. It's common, and it says destroy target creature. So obviously we're in for that, but as an additional cost to cast it, you pay 5 life, or sacrifice a creature, or sacrifice an enchantment.
I like Final Payment quite a bit. It's an efficient
5 life.
It's an efficient removal spell, and You can pay the, you can pay the iron price if you want. And either way, like no matter how you're casting this card, I think it's going to end up being pretty good because yes, if you're in a desperation mode, you're at 4 and you have to sack your 3/3 and then kill their 2/2 flyer. Sure, that's bad. But most of the time, playing this early, you can pay the 5 life and it's not going to end up being that bad, especially if you're aggressive. And then if you have creatures to sacrifice, like either they have good afterlife triggers or your opponent is playing, enchantments that lock them down, this card ends up being really good. The sacking an enchantment part's a little weird, but I guess that might come up every now and then.
Yeah, that's the one that stands out to me as well. What grade do you want to give Final Payment?
I would give Final Payment probably a C+.
Okay, because the payment is very real, but the final part's nice too. So C+ for Final Payment.
Another note on this, by the way, it has diminishing returns. I would play 1 in any Orzhov deck and be pretty happy about it. Once I'm looking at playing 2 or 3 of this, I'd want good sack outlets because you can't just paying 5 life's one thing. Paying like 15 life is another.
Right. So you're talking about building up enough afterlife creatures then at that point.
Yeah, afterlife is the most likely place to get that.
Yeah. Okay. So C+ for Final Payment. Next is another good one. It's called Grasping Thrall. This is 3 white black for a 3/3 flying thrall at common. And when it enters the battlefield, you drain your opponent for 2. So they lose 2 life, you gain 2 life. Actually, technically speaking, they take 2 damage and you gain 2 life.
I like Grasping Thrall.
Me too.
I'm going to play as many as I can get. Just the fact that the 2-point life drain really makes up for the fact that it's a little clunky. And
yes,
it makes it they stack well in multiples as well. So I think Grasping Thrall gets a C+.
Me too. And also another blank target, which I don't think that's a big deal, but I just like the idea of returning those. Next is Imperious Oligarch. This is white-black for a 2/1 Vigilance Human Cleric, common with Afterlife 1. This is your bread and butter common for Orzhov.
And it does deliver. Imperious Oligarch is going to really just make it so your opponent either has to deal with this eventually on offense or defense, and then you get a 1/1 for your trouble.
Yeah. Yeah, and the play pattern with this is like if it's a good trade, like if they play a 2/2, you just start attacking with it with vigilance and kind of force the issue. Otherwise, it's a great blocker and a particularly good additional blocker, like this plus something else. And then if it dies, you get the afterlife token anyway. It's a nice way to add a couple of extra power to make sure something dies. So C+ for Imperious Oligarch for me. This is just, again, like bread and butter.
I think C+. You're just going to, like, when someone lays out their Orzhov deck and they have 3 of these, 2 Grasping Thralls, and like 2 Final Payments, you're going to think their deck is pretty good. And those are all
agreed. Yeah. Turns out gold cards, right? They're good. Knight of the Last Breath is next. Now, this one's an uncommon. It's also 7 freaking mana, 5 white black for a giant knight. It's a 4/4. So vanilla test wise, ouch. That's brutal. 7 mana 4/4 is not good. Now it has an activated ability. 3, sacrifice another non-token creature, create a 1/1 white and black spirit creature token with flying. So you can pay 3 to sack a creature to like basically, and that thing gets Afterlife 1 for free. And then here's the thing, and this is what makes this card interesting. Knight of the Last Breath has Afterlife itself. Afterlife 3. Woo. It's a lot of Afterlife.
My main concern with this is getting it on the board because 7 mana is not trivial. But once you're on the board, this card gives you a very good effect on the game because it lets you cash in any creature for a 1/1 flyer. And you're often going to be sacrificing Afterlife creatures, right? So you sack an Afterlife creature to make 2 or 3 1/1 flyers. And if they do kill this or you trade it off in combat, you get 3 flyers. That's pretty good.
That is nice. Yeah. And you can build up a board of small flyers very quickly with an effect like that. Still, it's 7 mana. I mean, 7 mana, Luis. And it can't sacrifice itself, by the way. We should note that.
7 mana is a lot. I can see myself splashing this card, too.
Yeah, I can see you splashing this card as well. I actually like it. I think it still fits in the game plan. It looks like Orzhov wants to sit there and stare at you for a lot of turns like it often does. And if that's the case, you will eventually hit the point of playing Knight of the Last Breath. And then you're going to be able to activate it and you're going to be able to have it die at some point and it's going to kind of do its thing. So I don't hate it. I'm not in love. This is far from a bomb, but when you do get it on the battlefield, I think it's going to be very powerful. So I'm going to go C+ on Knight of the Last Breath, which is a little higher than I thought I was. But I like the text on this enough, and I think it fits the game plan enough that I'm going to go a little higher.
I like C for Knight of the Last Breath. I don't have it quite as high as you.
All right. Mortify is next. 1 white black for an instant and uncommon. This is a reprint. Destroy target creature or enchantment. Boom. Instant speed.
Pretty solid B. Like I
Yeah,
think
rock
it gets to
solid.
B plus, but it's still just a solid B. Just kills anything, and that's
Yeah. Yeah, the gold nature of it for me holds it to B, but otherwise it would be a B plus because randomly hitting an enchantment is a significant upside. Mortify, awesome. Pitiless Pontiff. This is our preview card, Luis. It's white-black for a 2/2 vampire cleric at uncommon. You can pay 1 mana and sacrifice another creature to give it indestructible and death touch until end of turn.
Pitiless Pontiff is a solid 2-drop at any point in the game. It's actually kind of better late than it is early. Because when you play this on turn 2, your opponent can just block it on turn 3, and you probably don't have the mana or fodder to sacrifice to it. But it really does have an impact on the board on turn 7 or 8. You know, your Gruul opponent, your Simic opponent that has just like 7/7s on the ground, just is looking at this and your other Afterlife creatures and concluding there's no real good attacks.
Yeah, it lets this thing trade off their best creature for your worst if they're attacking it on the ground. So that is not where they want to be. I like this card a lot. I just think it's a solid card across the board. I think it's like a B minus. I do think it's going to have a good effect, but it's also a 2/2 for 2 that's like slightly hard to cast, which I'm fine with.
Yeah, I like B minus at Pitiless Pontiff.
For Pitiless Pontiff. Next is Syndicate Guildmage. This is white-black for a 2/2 human cleric, and of course this is the Orzhov version of a Guildmage cycle. It's uncommon. First ability, 1 and a white. Tap it. Tap target creature with power 4 or greater.
That is okay, but there's going to be a lot of times when you're dying to a 2 or 3 power flyer when you're looking at this. And you're like, what exactly are you doing for me?
Right. And then below, it doesn't really help there either. 4 and a black, tap it. It does 2 damage to an opponent or planeswalker.
Which is a late game clock, but I don't even know. I guess Orzhov decks do want to win the game this way, but this is the card I'm putting a really high priority on. I think Syndicate Guildmage is going to end up being like a C+.
Yeah, neither of these abilities blow me away. I like C+ for Syndicate Guildmage as well. Here's the hybrid card for Orzhov. It is Vizkopa Vampire. It's 2 and a white-black hybrid. It's a 3/1 lifelinker. It's common.
Solid. Not exciting, but
fine.
It's going to trade off and gain you 3 life, and you'll be happy about it. So.
Yep, and that's what it'll do most of the time. And the time when it doesn't do that, it actually gets to hit your opponent, and then it's very good.
If you can get one hit in with it, it gets pretty exciting. I would give it a C. I think Vizkopa Vampire is just run-of-the-mill playable.
Same, and I think it will see a significant amount of play and probably do work against the aggressive decks. Next is the split card. It's called, what is that? Consecrate Consume. So Consecrate is 1 and a black-white hybrid. These are, of course, uncommon. Exile target card from a graveyard. Draw a card. All right. And then Consume is 2 black-white for a sorcery. And note here, the first half is an instant, the second half is a sorcery. So something to keep in mind. Target player sacrifices a creature with the greatest power among creatures they control. You gain life equal to its power. This is really interesting because these cards you read them and you think, oh no, I know these ones, right? My opponent gets a choice and it's an edict style effect. I'm not interested. But this kind of reads target player sacrifices their best creature and then you gain a bunch of life too.
I think this card is pretty good. You're not really casting Consecrate almost ever, but Consume is just a card I'd put in any white-black deck. So I think that it's going to end up being probably like a B minus.
That makes sense to me.
If you sack their 4/4 and you gain 4, that's a good swing.
Right. And just to, just do a little shortcut and look at the board states that you play and say, what if my opponent had to sacrifice the creature with the greatest power? Would that be the thing I would choose anyway? And you'll find it's actually kind of, it often is the case that is exactly what's going on. Okay. So that brings us out of Orzhov proper and into black. And that means that we're going to start with Bankrupt in Blood, which has definitely some of the most disturbing artwork I've ever seen. 1 and a black, by the way, that's Seb McKinnon. You are deranged, my friend. I like it. 1 and a black for a sorcery at uncommon. As an additional cost to cast this spell, sacrifice 2 creatures. Now, the benefit's nice. You get to draw 3 cards, but boy, you better really like sacrificing creatures to make Bankrupt in Blood good, because that's way too high.
I think this is just more of a constructed potential card than it is something that I'm interested in for limited. Like Blood Augury at 4 mana, sack 1 creature to draw 3 cards. Still not a particularly good card, and this card is a lot worse than that. Sacking 2 creatures is just such a huge cost.
It's too much. You've already paid the mana for them. It's your board. Yeah, forget that. I'm not bankrupting in Blood.
This is like an F.
It's an F. Yeah, we're not doing that. Next is Blade Juggler. This is kind of one of the marquee cards for Rakdos, actually. So we'll talk about Rakdos in a little bit. But Blade Juggler's 4 and a black for a 3/2. When it enters a battlefield, it deals 1 damage to you and you draw a card.
Yeah, pretty good deal.
That's fine. And then it also has Spectacle for 2 and a black. So you can cast a spell for a Spectacle cost rather than its mana cost if an opponent lost life this turn. Now that's good. My God, it's 2 less.
Yeah, if you can play this for 3, it's insane. Phyrexian Rager was, 2 and a black 2/2 with the same text where you take 1 and draw a card, and that was a staple. That card's always been good in limited.
I even played that card in cube sometimes.
Yeah, it's a fine cube card, whereas Blade Juggler, if you can get damage through, is better than that. If you can't get damage through, it's not the best, but if you're not doing much, then maybe paying this for 5 is not the end of the world either.
Yeah, I agree. I really like Blade Juggler. I think it sits at a good point, where your backup plan's fine and your primary plan is just insanely good in my mind. So I like C+ for Blade Juggler. I think this is just a really solid playable for that type of deck.
Yeah, I like C+ for Blade Juggler as well.
Especially if you're attacking. Blade Brand is next. 1 and a black for an instant. At common, it says target creature gains death touch until end of turn. Draw a card. Oof. This
card's pretty interesting. It's got some nice little combos because for any creature that has a ping effect or a lot of mass amounts of damage, then this can combine with that to just kill everything. But in general, it's basically a way for you to trade your crappy creature up for their big creature and without losing a card, because this replaces itself. It's actually kind of good in Orzhov as well, even though this is clearly a Rakdos themed card.
Why do you say that? Just because you have expendable blockers?
Yeah, you have often cheap creatures that you don't care about them dying, or you have leftover spirits from them dying, and Blade Brand works pretty nicely there. Of course, it also...
Okay. I mean, this card kind of stinks in general, though, right? Like, I mean, I like that we're exploring some of the places where this might be okay, but...
Oh, I don't think this card stinks. It's 2 mana. We've seen previous versions at 3 mana, and that has been a little bit too slow. But at 2...
Yeah, I don't like it. I don't like it that much.
At 2 mana, imagine 2 mana, sack a creature to kill target creature, draw a card. Right? That card...
I would like that, yeah.
This card can be that with a little bit of setup. So...
Yeah, it can also get completely blown out in the other direction.
Yeah, I mean, it does have that risk, just like most combat tricks. But it does. It is nice that this is size agnostic. It doesn't care how big their creatures are.
That's true. That is true. Your worst creature could trade off. All right. I mean, I was going to give a Blade Brand a D. Am I off?
Yeah,
here?
I think it's like a C-. It's also kind of cool if you're playing Rakdos and you attack them. They're going to block more often than normal because of Spectacle, and Blade Brand can kind of walk them into that.
That's true. That is totally true. All right. Well, we'll find out when it comes out. Blade Brand, I gave it a D. You said C-.
Yeah, I like C- for Blade Brand.
All right. Blood Mist Infiltrator is next. 2 and a black for a 3/1 vampire at uncommon. Whenever it attacks, you may sacrifice another creature. If you do, it can't be blocked this turn. That's a steep price to pay, but again, my assumption is that I want to be sacrificing creatures somehow.
This card's not that good on its own, but in a deck that's aggressive and has a lot of fodder, this card could be a reliable source of damage. Also, like when you play this and they're at 9, they have a pretty fast clock on them, so you don't mind throwing away some game pieces if you're going to kill your opponent.
Yeah, that is true. So then the question becomes vanilla test, right? Like, let's say that's not our primary thing, is to sacrifice creatures just to get in for damage. Now we're playing a 3/1 for 3 Blood Mist Infiltrator.
Yeah, I don't like that.
It's pretty bad. Yeah, I don't like that either.
I would give Blood Mist Infiltrator a C. I think in reality it's going to be the card that some decks don't want at all, and some decks think it's about a C+ level, but I think that averages out to about a C.
It is a lot of damage that you can get in for. So, okay. C for Blood Mist Infiltrator. Next is Carrion Imp. It's 3 and a black for a 2/3 flying imp. When it enters the battlefield, you may exile target creature card from a graveyard. By the way, it's a common. If you do, you gain 2 life.
This card's okay. It seems pretty replaceable just because, comparing this to the Messenger bird that gives you an Afterlife 1 token, it's way worse than that.
Yep, for sure. So what do you want to give it?
I would give Carrion Imp like a C-, probably. D+. Yeah. This is just not a card I'm going to be super happy playing.
Yeah. Catacomb Crocodile is next. It is 4 and a black for a 3/7.
With some nice flavor text.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like Catacomb Crocodile. I think it's a fine playable. I think you're gonna end up feeling like you got your money's worth when you play this card a lot of the time. It is a defensive card, so don't put this in your decks and be like, yeah, I'm getting salute.
Excuse me, sorry.
It is good in the defensive Orzhov decks, though. So I would give Catacomb Crocodile probably like a C. I think that you're going to end up playing it in those Orzhov decks and be okay. I mean, this is one more point of stat than Dowser Blights.
Yeah. And I like 3/7.
Not the best distributed, but I do think it is good.
Clear the Stage is next. It is 4 and a black for an instant and uncommon. It says target creature gets -3/-3 until end of turn, so that's good. If you control a creature with power 4 or greater, somehow we're on, what was that called? Ferocious. You may return up to one target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. Wow.
Yeah, it's a pretty big swing if you've got a 4-power creature. It's funny that this 4-power creature like theme is just kind of chilling here, but there's a couple cards that mention it. I think Clear the Stage is good. I would basically always play it, and I would put a higher priority on trying to pick up some front-heavy creatures that can meet this condition, because that turns this card from mediocre removal to premium removal, because 5-mana kill a creature, draw a card is way better than just 5-mana kill a creature.
Yeah, for sure. That upside is so enticing that I want to give this a good grade. Also, this is the type of removal that you can combine with combat to kill almost anything, because it's giving the creature -3/-3 rather than doing 3 damage to it. So that does mean that even though it's mediocre in that it's 5 mana, it doesn't necessarily just outright kill everything that you want to kill, which you kind of expect for 5 mana. There are ways to engineer the board to maybe get some things dead that you wouldn't be able to just on its own. So Clear the Stage for me, the upside is just a joke. I mean, that is an absurdly powerful card if you can make it actually work. I'm going to give it a B- just because I don't think I'm always going to be able to do this. Some good percentage of the time I will not, but every time I do, it's like an A-. So there you go.
I like B- for Clear the Stage. If you can set this up, it's going to be really, really good.
Do you know how it works timing-wise if my creature with power 4 or greater is gone by the time this resolves and I don't get anything?
If you cast Clear the Stage and they respond with a bounce or removal spell to kill or remove your 4-power creature, you're not getting the secondary benefit.
Huh. Are we sure about that, actually? Wait, it does target it. Like, when you're putting it on the stack, you're choosing the target.
It says if you control a creature.
I see.
So we can probably check in on that, but I think that Clear the Stage, like you play it, you target the creature, and then if you control a creature with power 4 or greater, which you may at the time the spell resolves.
Okay, so we'll look in, but I like B- for Clear the Stage. Next is Consigned to the Pit. This one's a little more straightforward. It's 5 and a black for a sorcery at common, and it says destroy target creature. Consigned to the Pit deals 2 damage to that creature's controller.
No.
So somehow the removal's getting even slower.
Yeah, you might play the first copy of this. You almost assuredly do not want the second or the third, but it does kill anything you want. The 6-mana removal I've never really been that impressed with, so I think Consigned to the Pit's probably going to be like a C-.
Yeah, me too. This is a you do what you got to do style removal rather than the premium stuff. Cry of the Carnarium is next. It is 1 black for a sorcery at uncommon. It says all creatures get -2/-2 until end of turn. Exile all creature cards in all graveyards that were put there from the battlefield this turn. If a creature would die this turn, exile it instead. Weird card, but let's just focus on the primary thing for limited, which is that it gives everything -2/-2. The main effect that the other part has to do with Afterlife. So it depends on if you're playing against them.
Yeah, this is kind of like a small sweeper with a little bit of upside. Though it is funny that it's not even necessarily guaranteed that your opponent has more Afterlife creatures than you do, since you're one of the Afterlife colors here. But you can of course structure your turns and your plays such that you don't have this own yourself. I would have to know a little bit more about exactly how the creatures play out before being really confident in the grade here, but my guess is it's going to be like a C+. These effects are usually pretty good.
Yeah, and they've seemed to get better recently. Also with small flyers, they're good. With tokens, they're good, etc. So, Cry of the Carnarium's probably going to be pretty good as long as it doesn't destroy your whole board.
Yeah, maybe it's a B minus.
Yeah, I'm going to go B minus on Cry of the
Carnarium,
and that could end up being a D minus too, but who knows? Dead Revels is 3 and a black for a sorcery. At common, it says return up to 2 target creature cards from your graveyard to your hand. These spells have really grown on me lately, by the way. And this one even has a little bonus. It has Spectacle for 1 and a black.
Yeah, this card's neat. It's a good way to get a little bit extra power in the late game. Also, maybe you get to have this turn where you throw away a creature to get something through, so you can play this for 2 and replay and start replenishing your board. So I think that the first copy of this is going to be pretty valuable. And even in just an Orzhov deck that is looking to grind your opponent out, having like 1 or 2 of these even could be great, especially with like an Afterlife flyer to get in for 1 to enable the Spectacle on this. Like that sounds sweet.
Definitely. Yeah. Being able to play with the card that you just got back in an aggressive deck is nice. That said, this card doesn't seem great. It's like a C minus to me, Dead Rebels.
I would give Dead Rebels a C. I think that later in the draft, there might be some decks that would even take this higher.
Alrighty. Debtor's Transport is next. And by the way, it was pointed out to me that this thing has little human hands, and now I can't unsee it. Terrible. It's the creepiest card anyway. Like, it didn't even need that. But it's 5 and a black for a 5/3 Thrall at common, and it's got Afterlife 2 and a Born to Die tattoo somewhere, because 3 toughness is pretty brutal on your 6-drop. But then again, it does turn into 2 1/1 flyers, so maybe you don't mind if it does.
This does a good job just like trading with whatever it is gets put in front of it, and you get 2 1/1 flyers. That said, not really prioritizing this. I think that it's weak enough to bounce or like enchantment-based removal that doesn't kill it. That I'm not feeling like I'm always going to get a great deal, even when I do get to cast this. So I would put Debtor's Transport at like a D+.
Yeah, I have it at D. It just seems like a junky 6-drop. Next is Drill Bit. 2 and a black for a sorcery. Target player reveals their hand. You choose a non-land card from it. That player discards that card, and it has Spectacle for black. So if you hit them, if they've lost life, you can hit their hand for just black mana. Now, in limited, this isn't quite as important, though, right? I mean, it's nice, but it's not quite the same thing that it'll be in Constructed.
No, like Constructed is where you get the real payoff on these kind of cards, because these decks just have these focused game plans, and you're able to like take one of their synergy cards out. In limited, most people just have a deck full of good cards, and Drill Bit's just going to trade for them. Basically, if you can reliably Spectacle this, I like it, because it lets you, let's say, you get through with your evasive 3-drop, and then on turn 4 you go Drill Bit, take your good 4-drop, play another 3-drop. You could mess up their curve, but if you're paying 3 mana for this, it's not very good, because remember, you paid 3 mana, they paid 0. You traded 1 for 1. You even had the choice of it, but your opponent didn't have to spend mana on the card you discarded. So it's not an advantageous trade unless I think you can Spectacle it.
Right. And then the other times, of course, they either are empty-handed where it's a blank, or they only have land left in their hand where it's also a blank. And those are pretty steep prices to pay. I think Drill Bit's probably like a D. Yeah,
I do too. I think that there are some really good aggressive decks that will play this card and end up being good. And it's a very good sideboard card.
Right.
So when you play against a control deck or a deck based around a specific card, Drill Bit could get a little bit more value there.
Grotesque Demise is next. It's 2 and a black for an instant. At common, exile target creature with power 3 or less.
They can't figure out whether this card's supposed to be common or uncommon. Reaver Ambush and Vanquish the Weak.
I remember that.
Yeah. There. But I think Grotesque Demise is just a solid C+, just a card you're going to put in your deck and be happy about.
Same thing. Just also a quick reminder to be careful, right? Because power can change by the time Grotesque Demise resolves, and if it changes to above 3, it will not. So you need to make sure that you take the opening and don't be greedy. If your opponent is playing white or whatever and they're tapped out and you need to kill their creature, kill it now. Don't wait.
It's also, exiling, I guess, is a little better here than normal because of the Afterlife creatures.
Great point. Yeah, totally. So C+ for Grotesque Demise. Next is Ill-Gotten Inheritance. It is 3 and a black for an enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, Ill-Gotten Inheritance deals 1 damage to each opponent, and you gain a life. And you can pay 5 and a black to sacrifice it to have it do 4 damage to opponent, and you gain 4 life.
Is this card good?
I feel like it's better than it looks. The life gain and the fact that it kind of means you the entire game doesn't, like, you can just sit there, right? Like
Right.
your entire game is just to game plan is just to make the game go as long as possible. And I think this is going to be really annoying. Especially if you get like 2 of them down, you have an unblockable, 2/2 lifelinker or whatever. It's kind of interesting.
And getting to sack it, I think, changes it quite a bit because it speeds up the clock by like 4 turns near the end of the game.
That's right. It also can, keep you alive for a critical turn that you might have died on.
Spectacle always on.
It does actually, doesn't it? Interesting. I didn't think about that. Yeah, that's actually a thing too. Now, look, we're exploring ill-gotten inheritance here because it's interesting. This card isn't great, I don't think, under any circumstance, but like this actually seems like it might be playable to me, and I want to try it out.
Yeah, I think ill-gotten inheritance is going to be a kind of cool build-around-y feeling card, even though you could maybe just put it in your aggro deck and be happy, or put it in your control deck as a big finisher.
Yeah. I mean, of course, this is going to be much, much better against slower controlling decks than it is against like Gruul. Like, I think I would probably sideboard this out against Gruul, for example, because they're just looking to take huge chunks of your life total down in big hits. But still, ill-gotten inheritance looks like sneakily playable to me. I'm still only going to give it a C- because I'm not very confident that it's very good, but I think that it might see a little more play than it looks like at the surface.
Yeah, C- seems right to me.
Noxious Grudion is next. It's 2 and a black for a 2/2 Death Touch Beast at common.
Yeah, this card is going to be just a exact C. It's just always going to be fine, going to be a little better against like the green decks, and there's not really much in the way of combining this with fight cards because the colors don't work out that way.
Right.
But it's just a fine card.
Yeah, fine card. So a C for Noxious Grudion. Orzhov Enforcer is 1 and a black for a 1/2 uncommon with Death Touch and Afterlife 1.
Ooh, I like that. Orzhov Enforcer does a very good job of just keeping your opponent at bay. Like they're just not going to want to trade for this card, and you're going to get a nice little 1/1 when you do end up trading this off. So I think Orzhov Enforcer is a pretty solid like C+.
Me too. It might even be a B-. This card is like extremely annoying.
It's also good in Rakdos. You just play this on 2, and then your opponent's not going to want to trade for it, so you get Spectacle going. That's
true. Let's go B- on Orzhov.
Yeah, that works for me.
Orzhov Racketeers is next. It's 4 and a black for a 3/2 human rogue at uncommon. When it deals combat damage to a player, that player discards a card. Wow, so that's an incentive to block. And if they do, well, it has Afterlife too.
Yeah, I like the combination of a Saboteur effect with Afterlife, since that gives your opponent, kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't scenario.
And how good is that? Like, let's say you're like, okay, Orzhov Racketeers, go. And they're like 2/2 for 2, go. And you're like, well, I can force them effectively to trade off here. Are you happy with that?
Yeah.
You did get 2 1/1s.
Paying 5 mana to kill their 2/2 and put 2 1/1 flyers into play is pretty good.
Yeah, I think so too. So Orzhov Racketeers seems solid to me. And of course, God forbid, you land this and then kill their blocker, and start hitting them with it. And that's just dumb. Yeah.
I would still just give Orzhov Racketeers a C+, I think.
I'm going to go B- on it. I mean, dude, Afterlife 2 is legit.
Yeah, Afterlife 2 is pretty big.
Yeah. So B- for Orzhov Racketeers. Plague White is next. It's 1 and a white. Get it? 1 and a black. For a 2/1 zombie at common. Whenever it becomes blocked, each creature blocking it gets -1/-1 until end of turn. Kind of like Ornery Goblin.
The Black Ornery Goblin, exactly.
Yeah. But only blocking.
Spectacle Enabler. Yes.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a C. Maybe a C-. It's just it's not that impressive, but some aggressive decks are going to be happy with it.
Yeah. It's probably just a C for Plague White. Nothing much to speak of there. Rakdos Trumpeter is next. It's 1 and a black for a 1/3 human shaman at common. It's got Menace, which is kind of weird because it's only a 1-powered creature, but you can also pay 3 and a red. So this is like a crossover card as well to give it +2/+0 until end of turn.
It's
fine.
A little overcosted. The pump effect is not that impressive, but a 2-mana 1/3 Menace is a very good Spectacle Enabler.
Yeah,
so I can
really
see
good.
Playing this without red if I had enough black Spectacle cards. Like if you're like Orzhov, but you just end up with a bunch of, of the common or uncommon black Spectacle cards for, you just play a Rakdos Trumpeter to try to enable those. Of course, in Rakdos, I think it's a decent finisher because it does the Spectacle thing early, and then later in the game, you're like, all right, I can attack for 3 or 5 damage with this.
Yeah, because I'm out of cards anyway, and now it becomes a mana sink, and by that point they're probably going to double block it, and then of course you can pump up your guy and trade off for maybe both of their creatures. So I like Rakdos Trumpeter. This just, even though it looks weird because you're like, oh, I'm Rakdos, I'm aggressive, and it's a 1/3 for 2, the menace really changes the equation on that, and I like that a lot. So I'd give Rakdos Trumpeter a C+. I actually think this is a card you're just going to see on the battlefield all the time.
C+, huh?
Yeah, I'm a little higher on it than I thought I would be, but I just think you're going to play it all the time.
I will give Rakdos Trumpeter a C. I don't think it quite gets there.
All right. Spire Mangler is 2 and a black for a 2/1 insect and uncommon. It's got flash and flying. And when it enters the battlefield, target creature with flying you control gets +2/+0 until end of turn.
Yeah, this card's pretty funny. So it can target itself. So if you want a 4/1 flying blocker, it can do that.
Yeah. Okay.
And it kind of, well, I think part of the joke here is that you have one of your Afterlife tokens and you play this to let you trade off that Afterlife token for a real creature.
Okay.
Which, these are all fine things. It's also just a 3-mana 2/1 flyer, which is a decent little aggressive stat. So
I like it. Yeah, it does a lot of things in decks like this. This card just hits enough, it just hits enough that it's probably fine. I think this is a C+ as well, by the way.
Yeah, plus for Spire Mangler.
Yeah. Thirsting Shade is black for a 1/1 lifelink shade at common. It does have the shade ability, which is to pay mana and pump up its power and toughness. In this case, it's 2 and a black to give it +1/+1 until end of turn. And boy, that's a steep cost to pay.
Oh yeah, I do not like this card very much.
Me neither.
It's just too thirsty for mana. Like it's not where you want to be. So I think this card looks like an F to me.
Yeah, I think that what they were going for here was, an enabler for Spectacle, because it does come down on turn 1. And then they thought, well, we'll throw you a little something later. But boy, it is just too bad, I think, to even put in your deck. The difference between 1 and a black to pump and 2 and a black to pump is just so big. So F for Thirsting Shade. Undercity Scavenger is next. It's 3 and a black for a 3/3 Ogre Warrior at common. When Undercity Scavenger enters the battlefield, you may sacrifice another creature. If you do, put 2 +1/+1 counters on Undercity Scavenger and then scry 2. Wow, you really do want to sacrifice a creature with this guy. You get a 5/5 and scry 2 for 4 mana if you can send something away.
If you can't sacrifice a creature, it's, as we said before, not that good. But if you can, this does quite a bit of work for you.
I think so too. Yeah. I mean, Undercity Scavenger still seems like a C to me because that is a steep cost to pay. But I mean, of course, you immediately say, oh, well, I'll sacrifice my Afterlife creature. And then I get this huge thing with a scry 2 and then my little flyer. That seems totally fine to me. And this thing's huge.
I do also like it as a sideboard card against people who are putting auras on your creatures.
Oh, totally.
Like walking them down, and you just could play this and just get a huge advantage out of that.
Yeah, it's a big time beating.
This is a Golgari card, it looks like, but it's just kind of chilling here. So
yeah, that is weird, isn't it? Izoni quoted on it as well. Yeah, weird.
But it is more of an Orzhov card than anything else. Yeah, I think Undercity Scavenger gets a C.
Yeah, solid card. Undercity's Embrace. This is 2 and a black for an instant at common. Target opponent sacrifices a creature. If you control a creature with power 4 or greater, you gain 4 life.
I'm not a big...
No.
I just think like the whole edict effect isn't very good. And when you gain the 4 life, it's because you're in a spot where the game's gone on long enough that you have a 4 power creature, at which point edicts tend not to be that great.
That's right. Also, 3 mana edict, takes away a critical window where you can get their 2 mana creature with your 2 mana edict. And feel at least like you're trading mana for mana. This makes that worse. So yeah, Undercity's Embrace to me looks really bad, especially given that there's Orzhov in the format. You might be playing against it, and this card is just horrendous against them. So I don't like it at all. I would give it, I don't know. Is there even a scenario where you'd want to bring this in?
I don't think so, unless it's like some kind of weird matchup where either my opponent's playing a control deck of very few creatures, or I'm playing a deck that has a lot of 4 power creatures and my opponent's very aggressive. Because if you can reliably gain the life against a deck where 4 life matters, then this could do something.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it's okay against Gruul, who has a hard time putting out a bunch of, and Simic. But yeah, I would go D- on Undercity's Embrace. It just seems really bad to me in a format like this.
Yeah, I like B minus for this.
Vindictive Vampire is our last black card. It's 3 and a black for a 2/3 vampire. At uncommon, whenever another creature you control dies, it does 1 damage to each opponent and you gain a life.
Fantastic card.
Ooh, these things are scary.
Having this in play just puts such a clock on your opponent. And at a 2/3, it actually can brawl a little bit by itself. So I think this card is excellent. I think this card's a B.
Me too. And, we talked about having sacrifice outlets or reasons to do this. Here's your reason. Vindictive Vampire can just win you the game out of nowhere. If you have that, it supports sacrifice stuff. It supports trading, all of it. Yeah, I like Vindictive Vampire at B as well. All right, so that means Rakdos. Is next. Yes. So the first one is our Cult Guild Mage. Properly creepy artwork here for sure. It's a psycho clown playing with a puppet. Yeah, that's just
the artist actually made that Jace puppet in real life and is auctioning it off right now.
That is a Jace puppet?
Yeah, look at it.
Oh my. Okay, that is cool. That is super funny too. I did not know that, but that is great. Oh, that's really good. Cult Guild Mage is black-red for a 2/2 human shaman at uncommon. First ability, 3 and a black, tap it. Target player discards a card. You can only do this at times that you could cast a sorcery. That's good.
Yeah, that's a fine ability.
Yep. And then the other one is red, tap it. It does 1 damage to target opponent or planeswalker.
Yeah, so that's a nice little spectacle enabler. Mm-hmm. I like this card because when your opponent's at low life, the red ability does put a clock on them. It also enables spectacle, like we said. Or if you have the time, you can just start using the 4-mana black ability and just getting a card every single time. So I think Cult Guild Mage kind of ticks all the boxes I'm looking for in a Guild Mage, which is it has, it's a 2-mana 2/2 with an effect early and an effect late. And, it really, there's no point in the game where Cult Guild Mage doesn't at least do something. The Guild Mages this time around weren't bombs. They used to be bombs, right? There used to be 1 or 2 in every cycle that are just windmill slam first picks. That's not true anymore, but I still think Cult Guild Mage just gets a solid B.
Yeah, same. And I really like it too. I think it fits. I think it scales well with the game, and that's a big part of the reason why the good Guild Mages are good. Next is Fireblade Artist. This card is scary, man. It is black-red for a 2/2 human shaman at uncommon. It has haste, and at the beginning of your upkeep, you may sacrifice a creature. When you do, it does 2 damage to target opponent or planeswalker.
Oh yeah, this card's powerful. This is
very powerful. Ooh, scary.
It's funny because the haste on this is actually not great because this isn't at its best on turn 2. It's at its best on like turn 7 or 8 when you have this in play and your opponent has to kill it. Otherwise, you just whittle them down with its ability.
Yeah, I mean, this lets you leverage the good early starts from a spectacle deck. You get your opponent down to 6 or 8 or whatever, and then you go Fireblade Artist, your move. And your opponent's like, I either have to kill you in 3 turns or kill that. And if I don't, then you get to not even enter combat and kill me. That's pretty strong. Now, it is a high cost to pay, but, you can play some black Afterlife cards or whatever, and you'll know what to do with the Fireblade Artist.
I think a couple of these I could see playing like the 1-drop Shade or whatever. Like,
yeah, just food for it, basically. Just throw it away. Yeah. I like Fireblade Artist at B. I just think this card's super strong.
I think it's a B.
Yeah. This next one is kind of funny. It's called Get the Point. It is 3 black-red for an instant. It's common. That's really notable here. It says destroy target creature, scry 1. Nice.
Cutting a mana off of the 6-drop removal spell all of a sudden turns it into something a lot more interesting. And scry 1 is also a nice little ability, as is instant speed. So I'm pretty happy playing Get the Point, and I would play a couple of these and not feel too bad about it. So I think this gets a C+.
Yeah, I'm going to go B- on Get the Point. And you know what pushed me over the edge? Scry 1. I don't know why that's on there, but I like it. I'm going to go B- on Get the Point. I think that's going to be a go-to removal spell, similar to cards in the past that cost 5 mana in black to kill a creature. Hackrobat.
I love the name here.
Great name, but I always think of a bat and it doesn't have flying. Anyway, 1 black-red for a 2/3 human rogue and uncommon with 2 different activated abilities. One of them is black, Hackrobat gains Death Touch until end of turn, or red, Hackrobat gets +2/-2 until end of turn. So you can make her into a 4/1. But then this is this is a little tricky, but she's got Spectacle for just black-red rather than 1 black-red.
Yeah, this card's kind of weird where both activated abilities are kind of similar because making it a 4/1 is kind of like giving it death touch when you're in combat. And
That's right.
I guess the idea is that your opponent has to block it because of the red ability, and then when they block it, you can just use the black ability. Also, the Spectacle is a 1-mana savings, which is not great.
Right. That's only relevant, at least in a curve-out scenario, if you've had a way to get in for the 1 damage on turn 1. Or turn 2, I mean.
So, but I think overall, this is a perfectly solid card. It's just a 3-mana 2/3 death touch would be good. And I think once you take all the weird parts about this and combine them, it ends up being a little bit better than that.
I just want to discount the spectacle part almost entirely and really just look at the red activated ability. And then this card's okay.
Yeah.
C+? Is this even, I mean, I know it's tempting because it's gold and has all this text on it, but I'm looking at it like, is this really in the B range?
I would give Acrobat a C+.
And next is Macabre Mockery, which is 2 black-red for an instant and uncommon. Put target creature from an opponent's graveyard. Wow, this is an instant. Okay, onto the battlefield under your control. It gets +2/+0 and gains haste until end of turn. Sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step.
Yeah, this is a weird card. You have to rely on your opponent having a creature, so it's not quite like a build around in that sense, but it is. This represents what, like a decent 5-6 points of damage if you take and steal something, and because it's an instant, you can often just trade off a creature.
What is the benefit of it being an instant, that you can use it defensively?
Yeah, that you can block with it.
Okay. That actually seems fine. I mean, as long as you have ways to get creatures in the graveyard, and if you're playing black-red, you do.
Yeah. And
kind of the name of the game.
I guess you could cast this during their end step. The creature wouldn't get sacrificed until your end step, but it would no longer have +2/+0.
Oh, yeah, it wouldn't. Now, it wouldn't have haste anymore either, but it wouldn't need it.
No, because it would control it.
Yeah.
Really weird.
So that is weird. So if you do want to attack with it, like on your turn, ideally you cast it your turn.
Just cast it and attack with it right away.
Okay. I don't know what to give this thing.
This doesn't look great. Basically, I think if you're really aggressive, you can play this as kind of like a weird way to get extra damage through.
Yeah.
You steal like an Azorius flyer and hit them for 5 in the air, but that just means you want 4 mana deal 5 to your opponent. So you have to be pretty aggressive. So.
Yeah, I don't want that. I'm going to go D on Macabre Mockery. Look, all of this is overshadowing the fact as well that like there is a significant setup cost here, that you have to get something dead that's worth getting back that could actually hit them.
Yeah, I like D for Macabre Mockery, though it might also be like a sideboard C, where if your opponent has a lot of good end of the battlefield effects, you can just try to piggyback off them with the Mockery.
I like that. All right, next is Rafter Demon. This is a card that kind of pushed out in front of the world as the common, but it's not actually that great. It's 2. Let's find out. It's 2 black-red for a 4/2 demon at common. It has when Rafter Demon enters the battlefield, if its spectacle cost was paid, each opponent discards a card. So that's pretty good. The spectacle cost is 3 black-red.
Yeah, so it gets more expensive.
It's more expensive,
but you do get a card. You get a 2-for-1. So this is less impressive than some of the other spectacle cards we've seen. But split card of 4 mana 4/2 or 5 mana 4/2, they discard a card. Yeah, that's not bad. Though you do have to enable the ladder.
Yeah,
I would say Rafter Demon's like a C-.
Me too. I'm not that excited about it. A 4/2 for 4 just doesn't.
You can stay in the rafters.
Yeah, sorry, Rafter Demon C-. Now this next card, holy smoke, this thing is good. It's called Rakdos Firewheeler. It's black, red for a 4/3 human rogue at uncommon. When it enters the battlefield, it deals 2 damage to target opponent. So just boom, just spots you 2 damage to their face, and 2 damage to up to 1 target creature or planeswalker. Dang, man.
Yeah, this card is a lot. It's a 4 mana 4/3 that picks off one of their 2/2s will already be good, and this just pops your opponent for an extra 2 points just for good measure.
Yeah. And it's a 4/3 for 4, which is acceptable. Yeah, to me, Rakdos Firewheeler is one of the better versions of the CCDDs. I mean, this thing has that mini flame tongue Kavu, is the kind of old school way to put it, where it deals damage to a creature. Like, you're going to kill a creature a lot of the times with this. And like you said, 2 to the head as well. I'm a big fan of the Firewheeler. It also just fits beautifully in this deck, clears out a blocker, chips away some damage on them, puts out a nice attacker. It's a 4/3. Sure, it doesn't have first strike or any abilities or whatever, but boy, this thing is really packing a lot of punch. I mean, geez, it spreads around 4 damage when it enters the battlefield, and it's a 4/3.
Yeah, this card's great.
I'm in. Yeah, the question for me, like I want to give it a B+.
Yeah, I would be totally fine.
Is that cool? All right, then I don't have a question anymore. Rakdos Roustabout is next. This is 1 black-red for a 3/2 Ogre Warrior at common. Whenever it becomes blocked, it deals 1 damage to the player or planeswalker it's attacking.
Basically, what it's saying is you get Spectacle if this attacks, no matter what.
Yes, that's exactly what this is saying.
If they take it, you Spectacle. If they block, you get Spectacle. And I think that's going to make it a pretty effective card in the Rakdos decks because it just means that you get to, get this 1 turn of guaranteed Spectacle, and a 3-mana 3/2 is not that bad when you're an aggressive deck, and you can always trade this off for at least a point of damage.
Right. And I mean, what are they going to do? Take it?
Yeah, that's
it's not getting better. Like, they're not going to.
If you don't have any Spectacle cards in your deck, this is just like a medium aggressive card. If you do have Spectacle cards, though, it becomes fantastic. So
agreed. Yeah, C+ for Rakdos Roustabout.
Yeah, I like C+, though there's some decks that are just not going to be that interested in it.
Yeah. Next is a similar card. It's just much smaller. It's called Footlight Fiend. This is the hybrid card, so you can play a black or a red. It's a 1/1 devil at common. This one says when it dies, it deals 1 damage to any target.
Yeah, I really like this card. I found Goblin Arsonist to just be a solid addition to a lot of either aggressive decks as a way to get damage through or enable Bloodthirst, or defensive decks as a really good blocker because this takes out 2/2s on defense. So it's also worth noting that it's a good addition to Orzhov decks because you can just play it for the black, and then it works with all their sacrifice abilities too.
Sure,
so,
that makes sense.
I like Footlight Fiend probably at a C+. I actually think this card's really efficient. 1-drops that are actually good are few and far between.
Yeah, and nearly guaranteed. What's it called as well?
Spectacle, right? I mean, just imagine you're laying out your curve of your Orzhov control deck, and you just have 2 of these. Like on defense, they're kind of like deadweight.
They just sit there and say, even your X2s can't attack into me. Yeah, and then if you're in Rakdos, you play it on turn 1. Well, if you're on the play, they're probably not going to have anything to interact, so you get Spectacle just from attacking. And then at any point, if you need Spectacle, you can attack, and it'll probably get blocked, die, and you can ping the opponent, and then Spectacle as well. So C+ for Footlight Fiend. Last card for Rakdos is the split card. So it's called Carnival Carnage. Carnival is 1 black-red hybrid, so just 1 single mana for an instant. It does 1 damage to target creature or planeswalker and 1 damage to that permanent's controller. That's pretty minimal. But Carnage is 2 black-red for a sorcery. Carnage deals 3 damage to target opponent. That player discards 2 cards.
Yeah, this Carnival Carnage is quite good because a 4-mana 2-for-1 that also nugs them for 3 is good. And then it has the backup of just being able to kill their 2/1 if you're on the draw and you have a slow hand.
Yeah.
So I think this card's... I think Carnival Carnage... I always want to call it Carnage Carnival. I don't know why.
Yeah, I do too.
My guess is probably a B-. I just think you're going to be always happy to have this card in your deck.
Okay. Yeah, B-. Carnage is just such a... For those of us that lived through Blightning, you'll be like, "Oh my god!" It just hurts.
Well, there's no blood blades running around.
That's true, and they couldn't hit this anyway, yes. So they've protected us from that. Red. Let's move on to red. First card is Act of Treason, 2 and a red for a sorcery. It is common. It says gain control of target creature until end of turn. Untap that creature. It gains haste until end of turn, and it has become to the point now, Luis, that when I see Act of Treason, I don't even think about the text on the card as it was meant to be printed, meaning take your guy and hit you and maybe I win the race. Instead, I just see it as, can I sacrifice the creature before I have to send it back to you? And the answer in this case seems to be, yeah, you can sometimes.
Yeah, there's the black Orzhov cards that combine well for your Rakdos deck with Act of Treasons. And you have, some red options as well. So you're going to end up, I think being able to construct an Active Treason deck, though it's not clear if that Active Treason deck is actually good yet.
Right. But then we also have to rewind back to just its original printed purpose, which is actually pretty good in Rakdos as well. Steal your creature, your best blocker, And so now you're down a blocker and I'm up an attacker. And in an all-in strategy like this, especially with some of the cards that we mentioned before, like Fireblade Artist to finish things off, just the one hit from a big Act of Treason turn can get the job done anyway. So I think it's particularly well suited there as well.
No, I think that Act of Treason, it's a build-around card. I don't think you're going to want to put it in that many decks as just an aggressive card, even though that has that use. But I think it's like a build-around like C+.
Yeah, I do too. And I also do think that there's going to be more decks that want it just as a card than normal. I think we're actually going to just see it in Rakdos and even
just like the average Rakdos deck just has one Act of Treason to just
demise your opponent. I think it might
opponent.
just have it. Yeah, I think it just might. Like, because it's such an all-in strategy that I think that just the one turn where you get to take away their blocker and hit them with it is just like game ending. They have so many ways to get incidental damage through to you too.
That's fair.
Yeah, so CC plus for Act of Treason, and you might be able to build around it. Burn Bright is 2 and a red for an instant at common. It says creatures you control get +2/+0 until end of turn.
This is better than Trumpet Blast, which gives all your attacking creatures +2/+0, but not as many funny moments. I do remember seeing some of the top 8 of a GB cast Trumpet Blast, then attack with everything.
I do remember that.
Not good effect. Yeah. So Burn Bright's fine. You have to be going kind of wide to want this. There's Goblin Gathering. We'll get to that a little bit later, and maybe the Black Afterlife cards to combine with this. But yeah, I think Burn Bright's probably, you'll know when you want it, and not very many people are going to be in that camp.
Yeah, I would guess that it's a D in an average set like this. So I don't think you want it in Gruul at all, for example. So I'll say D for Burn Bright. Next is Burning Tree Vandal. This is 2 and a red for a 2/1 human rogue. At common, and this is our first instance of Riot. This creature enters the battlefield with your choice of a +1/+1 counter or haste, and whenever Burning Tree Vandal attacks, you may discard a card. If you do, draw a card.
So a lot of the Riot cards, as a way to make the choice a little bit more interesting, have attack triggers, because that basically makes you choose between a +1/+1 counter or getting to attack and trigger them right away. Because in limited, as we said in our kind of mechanics preview article, the +1/+1 counter mode is generally going to be more powerful. But once you factor in getting the haste ability, the attack trigger right away, that could change the equation. So
that's right.
I think Burning Tree Vandal is good, because a 3-mana 2/1 haste that lets you rummage, discard, and then draw is pretty good. And then if you don't have good attacks there, you just play it as a 3/2 and move on.
Yeah, you can attack with it, trade it off for something, get a rummage in there, and you're probably happy as well. This seems like a super solid C to me, just like middle of the road Riot card.
Yeah, Burning Tree Vandal is, I think, textbook C.
What does Cavalcade of Calamity do, and why is it such a cool name?
It is a cool name. It's 1 and a red. It's an uncommon enchantment, and it says whenever a creature you control power 1 or less attacks, Cavalcade of Calamity deals 1 damage to the player or planeswalker that creature's attacking. So it's a new updated raid bombardment where basically it makes it so all your 1 or 0 power creatures just immediately nug your opponent for 1 whenever they attack. I'm not really into this. I don't see there being quite enough token support to make this card good, and you really need to mean it to play this card. You can't go halfway. Like you need to play this and have 7 or 8 ways to token generation or 1 power creatures to make this good.
Yeah, build around D for Cavalcade of Calamity.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. This next one's scary, man. Clamor Shaman. Clamor Shaman? Clamor Shaman.
Yeah.
Shaman.
Is it a Clamor or a Shaman? It looks like a Shaman to me.
Yeah, it's a modal card. And you must choose when you put it on the stack, Clam or Shaman. This is 2 and a red for a 1/1 Goblin Shaman at uncommon. But get this, it's got Riot. So first things first, it has Riot. But whenever Clamor Shaman attacks, target creature an opponent controls can't block this turn. Ugh. It just makes this thing a must kill. Must block, must kill.
So what's mostly going to happen with this is you're going to have 1 blocker and your opponent's going to have 1 or 2 creatures. They're going to go Shaman, give it haste, attack with everything your creature can't block. And then the onus is really on you to either kill it or play another blocker next turn. And the problem is if you play a second blocker and then their next turn is kill one of your blockers, attack with everything, you're probably just dead at that point.
Right. And even in your best case, if they attack with everything, you are kind of forced to block the Clamor Shaman for that 1 turn as well. So that's 2 combat steps where you didn't really get to do the thing that you were planning on doing, like block the creatures that are killing you. And that's, that's sort of your average case. I mean, it gets a lot worse from there too. So
yeah, I think Clamor Shaman's quite good in any aggressive deck, and
me too.
I would give it. I would just give it a B.
It's a B. I think Clamor Shaman's a B, whether you pick Clam or Shaman.
Yes.
Dagger Caster is next. It is 3 and a red for a 2/3 Viashino Rogue. It's uncommon. When Dagger Caster enters the battlefield, it deals 1 damage to each opponent and 1 damage to each creature your opponents control.
So this is the card I was talking about to combo with Blade Brand to give one of your creatures Death Touch. If you have 6 mana and you can play this, and in response to the trigger, bam, Death Touch, it just wipes your opponent's whole board.
Oh, that's sweet. That is super awesome.
That is a Mondo combo. I think that's going to happen. That's going to be a feature in Limited.
So that's a common and an uncommon teaming up? Yeah, that'll happen.
And the common is not a particularly high value one, though. I do think Dagger Caster, even by itself, is pretty solid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like if you pick off a few Flying Spirit tokens or something like that, that's fine. Also, you just get in for 1 damage, regardless.
Yeah, and
sure.
I think by itself, Dagger Caster is probably a C+. Just because
I think so.
It can eat their 2/1s or their 2/1 on flyers and be, feel really good about it. And then I do think that the combo we just discussed is an actual combo that you should be on the lookout for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm not looking forward to losing to that particular combo. So Dagger Caster, C+-ish, depending on your build.
I think that's right.
Deface is next. It's red for a sorcery at common. It says choose 1, destroy target artifact, or destroy target creature with Defender.
I don't think you can main deck this card, but it's an effective sideboard card.
Yeah, I agree. So we'll give it a sideboard, whatever. It's just sideboard grade for Deface, but you'll know when you want it. Feral Maca is next. This is 1 and a red for a 2/2 cat.
This is a card I hope not to play, but if your curve dictates it, aggressive decks do sometimes run just 2 mana 2/2s.
By the way, that's just a tiger, right?
That is not a cat. That is a tiger. Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Or a Maca or whatever. So D, I would say for Feral Maca, this is not where you want to be, but yeah, when you need it, you need it. Flames of the Raised Boar. This is 5 and a red for an instant at uncommon. This thing's very powerful. It does 4 damage to target creature an opponent controls. Then Flames of the Raised Boar deals 2 damage to each other creature that player controls if you control a creature with power 4 or greater. Little sub-theme here.
The sub-theme is interesting. I don't know how often it's going to come up, though. It's funny because it's more of a Gruul thing than a Rakdos thing. But we did see some black cards with it. So I think Gruul is going to enable this a little bit easier.
Oh, way easier. Yeah, boy. But how sick is that? It does 4 damage to a creature, and then if you have the Ferocious thing, it does 2 damage to every other creature they control?
Oh, yeah, this card's great.
Oh, my God. You could wipe their board.
Well, this card's good if you don't have a 4-power creature. It's great if you do have a 4-power creature. And I think the average Gruul deck is going to be quite good.
Yeah, I think this is going to be like a solid B to B plus in a Gruul deck, and it's probably a B minus in just if you can cast it.
6 mana deal 4 is a bit below the curve. Like, this is Unfriendly Fire for 6 mana, so I'm not that happy about it.
Yeah,
but
I'm factoring in that you will still sometimes
get like a third of the time have it. Yeah,
or a quarter of the time. Where in Gruul, I actually expect that you'll have it quite often.
Yeah, and you can also set it up such that you do. Right. Yeah, I think this is going to end up probably being closer to probably a B. I think a B is where Flames of the Raised Boar is going to end up.
On average, yeah. What about Gates Ablaze?
This card's nice. It's 2 and a red. It's a sorcery. It deals X at uncommon. It deals X damage to each creature or X number of gates you control. This is so perfect because the gate deck wants a sweeper, and this is a sweeper that only the gate deck can play. It's actually
so good.
It's just the dream. So because it's like a build around B. It's really good if you can reliably cast this to deal 3 damage. Like, if you can cast this to deal 2, it's good. If you can cast this to deal 3, it's great. And I think that there's some decks that are just going to be very happy with this card. So this is the kind of card you need to make the Gates deck work, because that deck is always playing a turn or 2 behind. So I really like Gates Ablaze as a build around B.
Me too. And boy, I'll tell you what, it might even be a build around A. The 2 cards we've seen go really nice with the Gates plan. There's this one, and then the flyer that gains you a bunch of life to get back on the life you lost while you were setting up your Gates Ablaze.
Oh, yeah.
Love it. What about Gore Clan Wrecker?
It says 3 and a red for a human warrior. at common. It's a 2/2. So 4 mana, 2/2 Riot Menace. So I feel like we see this card almost every set. It's the 4 mana, 2/2 haste with Explore, the Brazen Buccaneers, and now we have Gorkon Wrecker, where you're going to want to just play this as a 3/3 because 4 mana, 3/3 Menace is fine. But if your opponent's low enough life, sometimes you're going to give it haste instead and just get in for 2 right away.
Yeah, I'd say either option is fine. Yeah. Right? Like
fine is how I would describe this. So I think Gorkon Wrecker gets like a C-.
Yeah, C- for the Wrecker. Goblin Gathering. Now, you mentioned this one a minute ago as a potential combo for the, what's it called? Cavalcade of Calamity. Yeah. What does it do?
It's 2 and a red. It's a common sorcery. Create a number of 1/1 red goblin creature tokens equal to 2 plus the number of cards named Goblin Gathering in your graveyard. So the first one makes 2. It's a 3 mana, make 2/1 on goblins. A little below rate. Second one makes 3. That's a little above rate. I think, Hordling Outburst was an uncommon and a good one at that. And then then the third one, 4 goblins for 3 mana. Fantastic. So this is,
and now your Burn Bright and your Calamity and stuff
this is a really cool little build around here. I don't know how often it's going to come together, but if you can get like 3 of these in your deck, it seems like it could be cool.
Yeah, it does. It seems cool to me too. I assume that I just would not be playing one of these in like a random Rakdos deck.
No, playing one doesn't make that much sense to me, but once you hit 3 is kind of the number I'm looking at, and once you hit like 4 or 5, then you really did it.
Yeah, there you go. Still, I mean, do we want to go build around with this thing? Is it just a regular?
It's kind of like a self-referential build around where the first Goblin Gathering is an F, the second Goblin Gathering is a D, the third one is a C, and the fourth one's a B.
Yeah, the fourth one might be an A.
Well, it's like a C+. But I think the net is that Goblin Gathering is really like a C- card, or a D+ card, but it has some applications.
There you go. What about Gravelhide Goblin?
It's 1 and a red for a 2/1 Goblin Shaman at common, and it has the ability 3 in a green. Gravelhide Goblin gets +2/+2 until return. So 2 mana 2/1, and then has a pump activation for 4, which is like a Devkaran Dissident from Guilds of Ravnica, but on balance probably a little bit worse because you give up the second point of stats for a 1 cheaper activation. Mm-hmm. A fine Gruul card and a mediocre anything else card, which probably makes it like a C-.
Yeah, it's probably C-. Gruul probably will play them everywhere else you won't. Light Up the Stage is 2 and a red for a sorcery at uncommon. Exile the top 2 cards of your library until the end of your next turn. You may play those cards, and it has Spectacle for just red.
So note it's until end of your next turn. So
end of my next turn. So like I do this, I pass, it comes back to me, I can still do it.
So that's a pretty big clause to make note of, because it means if you hit 2 lands, you get to play a land this turn, then play a land next turn. If you hit 2 expensive spells, maybe 1 per turn. So it's a lot more powerful than it looks. It looks like a bad divination, except that Spectacle for 1 mana means that this could lead to some pretty gross turns.
It is worse than divination, though, right?
I think in an aggressive Rakdos deck, it might not be.
Okay, the 1 mana is really good. So, like, one of the things we use divination for is to find our lands, and this actually does do that.
Yeah, hey, you can play lands off it, and you have 2 turns to play it. Clearly, you want to play this before playing a land if you can manage that, because that gives you the opportunity to play a land off it. And if you can set this up where, like, turn 3 you play the 3/2 ogre that pings them when they block it. Turn 4 you attack, they like trade, and you go Spectacle, Light Up the Stage, play a land, play a spell from my hand, next turn play the spell that I revealed off this. That's a good deal.
Really good. Yeah. That is really good. Yeah. Okay, I'm sold. Yeah. That Light Up the Stage seems kind of cool, actually.
I like Light Up the Stage at C+, but just note you really do want to be aggressive to maximize this.
Okay. Rubble Reading is next. We can do this one pretty quickly. It's 3 and a red for a sorcery at common. It says destroy target land, scry 2. I don't know why you're here, Rubble Reading, but we will not be playing you.
Land destruction is just not effective, especially at 4 mana. You just don't get much value out of it. Like, they got to use the land. They paid 0 for the land. Don't try to blow up the lands.
So an F for Rubble Reading. Rubble Belt Recluse is next. This is 4... or it's Recluse, isn't it? 4 and a red for a 6/5 that attacks each combat if able. This is a common. That's big.
Yeah, this is pretty big. I like this as a
like
5-drop. I would say Robobolt Recluse gets a C. It's just a
Same.
a solid 5-drop for either Gruul or Rakdos. And
yeah, this is the type of card that if you would have read to me every stat except for the toughness, I would have guessed 3 or 4, not 5.
Yeah, and
so that's
attacking
actually really
every turn,
good.
Not a big drawback on your 6/5 that you want to attack with anyway.
Right, exactly. And you do get to block with it the turn that it gets played. So C for
I like C
Recluse?
for Robobolt Recluse.
Okay. Rumbling Ruin is next. It's 5 and a red for a 6/6 elemental at uncommon. When Rumbling Ruin enters the battlefield, count the number of +1/+1 counters on creatures you control. Creatures your opponents control with power less than or equal to that number can't block this turn. Okay. So this is a riot payoff and really confusing text on this card.
Yes. So
I mean, that I know what it does. Like, I get it, but I'm like, creatures your opponents control with power less than or equal to the number. It's like, what?
Basically, yes, all creatures that are equal to or smaller than the number of +1 counters you have total can't block this
all
turn.
your things.
Yeah. So
what a weird
and
card.
it's 6 mana 6/6, which is pretty good.
I like that part.
So,
No, this card's really good. Don't get me wrong. It's just kind of
also
confusing,
can combine nicely with Adapt. You just have like a green Adapt creature. And, you made it pretty big, and then you just play Rumbling Ruin. So,
yep. Yeah, Rumbling Ruin just seems super solid. But the thing that carries it for me is the vanilla test. 6/6 for 6 is I'm interested in that, and if it has upside, then I'm kind of just in. So
you give Rumbling Ruin a
B-.
Yep, B-, exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah. Scorchmark is next. It's 1 and a red for an instant. It's common, and this is your cheap red burn spell for the set. It does 2 damage to target creature, but it exiles it if it dies this turn.
Yeah, this card's always good, and I think it's going to get just a C. I don't think I'm quite at C+, but against Orzhov, it's going to be really nice because they're just going to play one of their nice little, uncommon afterlife creatures, and you're just going to go bzzzt.
Bzzzt, see you later. No flyers for you. So C+ for Scorchmark, depending on the matchup. Skewer the Critics, which is what we do every time we turn on the microphones, Luis. 2 and a red for a sorcery at common. It says Skewer the Critics deals 3 damage to any target. So here's your slightly bigger burn spell for the set, although this one's a sorcery. But here's the thing. Spectacle for red.
This card certainly has constructed implications, and even unlimited, it's going to be fantastic because a 3-mana deal really 3 at sorcery would be a C. Like, that's just a fine card. And giving it Spectacle means you can just have some really nice turns here when you just, on turn 4 or 5, get to kill one of their creatures and then play this. It is post-combat most of the time. Spectacle does do that, but it's still going to be a really efficient card when it works and a solid card when it doesn't, which I think makes Skewer the Critics a pretty easy C+.
Yeah, I might even give it a B-. I mean, this is efficient. Like, you're killing some pretty big stuff for 3 mana or sometimes 1.
Yeah, I suppose that's true.
I'll go B- on Skewer.
I could see Skewer.
I'm going to skewer your rating.
Sure.
What about Smeltward Ignis?
This is 1 and a red for a 2/1 elemental at uncommon. And you can pay 2 and a red and sacrifice it to gain control of target creature with power 3 or less until end of turn. Untap that creature, it gains haste. You can only use this ability anytime you could cast a sorcery. This is a kind of weird one. Like, a 2-mana 2/1's not great by itself, and it can only steal small creatures, which kind of defeats the purpose of steal effects. So I think it's just fine. I think in a deck that has good sacrifice outlets, that's trying to run active treason, this card kind of does the thing you want to do, but outside of that, it's not all that impressive.
Yeah, I agree. Especially what you said really resonated about, you want to steal the big stuff, right? And instead you're stealing something small. That said, I mean, if you're hurting for 2 drops, you could do way worse than a Smeltward Ignis. This thing's fine for that. It's what is it, a C?
Yeah, I would give it a C. Like, it's a 2-mana 2/1 that has a little bit of extra text for the late game, and that's not that bad.
And it could be something that you could try to take advantage of with some of the cards in the set. Spear Spewer is next. This is red for an 0/2 Goblin Warrior at common. It has Defender. Yes, an 0/2 Defender in red. But here's the deal. This is key. And I by the way, once I saw Spectacle, I was like, what is going to be the 1-drop enabler? And this is it. Tap, it does a damage to each player.
Yeah, it's funny that I was talking about how the Goblin Fire Singer made it a little too easy. I didn't know if they were going to do that again. And then they did. So
They did.
Pierce,
Yeah.
Pierce,
They made it a little worse.
Yes, it hits both
it doesn't
players,
attack.
but I still think that Spear Spewer is going to be very good in any deck that has a lot of good spectacle outputs.
I think this is just going to be one of those cards that's super easy to overlook until you see Spectacle have its good curve out, and then you're going to go, right, Spear Spewer is exactly the card that enabled every turn of Spectacle.
Yeah, just being on for no mana is huge.
Yep. Big time enabler coming down on one and not costing anything.
I actually have this at C+, I think.
I agree. I just think that this is the glue. Now, look, if you're just throwing this in your Gruul deck, you're probably doing it wrong.
Yes.
Like, this is not a desirable effect, overall. But in a Spectacle deck, I think this is a pure enabler, probably the best one in the set. Next is Spike Wheel Acrobat, 3 and a red for a 5/2 human rogue at common, and it has Spectacle, 2 and a red. 5/2 for 3 in the right curve. That's pretty good. And then it's 4 if not.
Yeah. The thing is, a 5/2, even for 3, still just trades for their 2-drop.
It might as well say 11/2.
Right.
Like,
it doesn't
whatever.
feel like it's that much different. So I don't have this card at a particularly high rating. Even
I have it at a rock solid D.
Yep. I like Spike Wheel Acrobat at D.
What does Storm Strike do, and why is it strictly better than the versions of it that we've seen in the past?
It's a 1 mana instant. It's red at instant at common for target creature gets +1/+1 against first strike until end of turn, scry 1. So we've seen, like Kindled Fury and stuff like that. This is 1 mana +1/+1 first strike. We haven't seen it with additional scry 1 for free, and these cards were already solid before this.
I agree. The first strike plus the mild power bump meant they could win combat a lot more than you'd think. And Scry 1 is just good.
Yeah.
Like, Storm Strike is just a very solid combat trick to me. Again, it's like a C. Like, I'm not excited, right? It's still just a combat trick, but geez, I like that they're pushing these even a little further and a little further. They're ended up being quite good.
Yeah, I like Storm Strike at C, and I'm interested to see where the saga goes.
Draw a card. What does Tin Street Dodger do?
It enables Spectacle, albeit poorly. It's a red for a 1/1 haste Goblin Rogue, an uncommon, and you can pay a red to give it Tin Street Dodger can't be blocked this turn except by creatures with Defender. So 1 mana 1/1 haste, still not good. The Torch Courier, it was the one in the last set. And then paying a red to make it, even if it was just pay a red to make it unblockable, it still wouldn't be fantastic. And this is a little bit worse than that. There was a couple defenders here and there.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, and the fact that it costs mana, right? Like we really liked the other enabler, the Spear Spewer, because it doesn't cost mana, so you can actually pay for your Spectacle cards. This does not have that ability. I'm not a big fan of the Tin Street Dodger. I think I want to just dodge
I would say that Tin Street Dodger probably gets an F.
Yeah, D.
Sure.
D minus, F, sure. Okay, so that's it for red, which brings us to Gruul. So Gruul's first card is called Balrak Clan Crusher, and it is 3 red, green, for an uncommon 4/4 Ogre Warrior. All right. I'm interested. Tap it, remove a +1/+1 counter from a creature you control. And this guy does kaboom, 2 damage to any target.
Yeah, it's just a nice nice big way to take advantage of your counters. I mean, my 5 mana 4/4s, I don't really want to tap them very often. I want to kind of be attacking with them.
That's like old school design.
Oh, yeah.
They used to make like 10/10s that tap to do 2 damage.
Riven Turnbull was like a classic. It's 5 blue-black for a 5/7 that taps to add 1 blue mana. Oh, yeah. So
might attack with that one. So this does have that problem, but that is at least a powerful ability. Like, you could say, play a creature with Riot, say, I'll get the counter, tap your Crusher, kill a blocker, go. And like, you're pretty happy to cash in a counter for 2 damage, even if it does cost you an attack.
Oh, yeah, a counter for 2 damage is good value. It's just, it is funny that it's on such a big creature that you're often going to have like these like warring desires between attacking and using it. But either one is good, and I think the average Gruul deck will have enough +1/+1 counters. You'll need like probably 3 cards that get counters. Right. That you'd be playing already, that don't put bad cards in to make this work. And then once you're at more than that, it becomes quite effective. So I think that the Bulrak Clan Crusher is probably going to get like a B-.
Yeah, I think so too. If it had slightly better base power and toughness, I would put it right up into the BB plus range. But 4/4 for 5 is kind of yawn. It's not that great. So B- for Bulrak Clan Crusher. Next is the Clan Guild Mage. This is red-green for a 2/2 human shaman at uncommon. You can pay 1 and a red and tap it to have target creature can't block this turn. Dang. That's good, especially in a deck in a archetype like this that's trying to beat down. And then its other ability is, well, also a beat down ability. It's 2 and a green, tap it, target land you control becomes a 4/4 elemental creature with haste until end of turn. It's still a land.
I'm not like super into either of these abilities. Just paying 2 mana to make it. I just think it's kind of expensive to pay 2 mana to make a creature can't block. And then the green ability, your land has to be untapped if you want to attack with it. So it's really 4 mana, and if your land dies, you're down a land.
It's true, yeah.
So it's not just like making...
Yeah, it's your whole turn, I mean, effectively.
Yeah.
I like them. I just feel like, if I'm going to be playing a bunch of 4/4s and 3 things and 5-powered creatures or whatever, then this is fine. Like, blank their biggest blocker. That's exactly what I want to do. Or create another attacker.
Yeah, I think it's playable, but I just am not excited about the Clan Guild Mage.
Well, I am. I'm giving it like a B.
Oh, man, I would give Clan Guild Mage probably like a C+.
Ooh, okay. All right. We'll see how it goes. I mean, I'm making some assumptions about the way that Gruul plays out, but it seems like that's how it's going to play out. Next is Frenzied Erynx.
Now this is
that thing, and this is a common. I still can't. Does this not just read as an uncommon?
It reads like an uncommon. Yeah. It's 2 red-green. It's a cat beast. It's 3/3 common, as we just said. It has Riot, Trample, and you can pay 4 red-green to give it +3/+0 until end of turn.
That is so much rules text for a common. The card's awesome.
Oh yeah, it does quite a bit, and I think that you're just going to be happy playing as many as you can get of these. The 4-drop slot, you can afford playing 3 or 4 easily. Yep. So I think Frenzied Erynx gets like a B-.
Me too. Because they added that random extra ability to just like fireball your opponent.
It's a 4-mana 4/4 with tons of upside.
With trample, yeah.
Sometimes it'll be hasty, but 4-mana 3/3 haste trample. Every version of the card is great, and then it just has the random pump ability just to make sure that in the late game it also does something.
Yep. So Frenzied Erynx B-, really good. Great for that. Next is called Rhythm of the Wild. This is powerful stuff. This is 1 red-green for an enchantment at uncommon. Creature spells you control can't be countered. Okay, sure. But the main thing is...
Not a big thing.
Not a big thing. But non-token creatures you control have Riot.
Oh, yeah.
Boom. Of course, we should mention that this does give you the ability to have multiple triggers of Riot. So if your Frenzied Erynx comes down the turn after you play Rhythm of the Wild, you will get 2 instances of Riot, and you can choose whatever combination you want. This card seems super, super scary. Like if my opponent goes 2-drop Rhythm of the Wild, I'm like, uh-oh. I just don't. Yeah. I feel like how are you ever going to get your blockers down? Because you're going to be getting hit with haste creatures or big creatures or whatever, just like turn after turn after turn. Now, it's not a perfect card, right? Rhythm of the Wild, is a bad top deck. Late, if you're behind, it does literally nothing. Effective, there's a lot of that going on. But in the types of decks that you're going to play Rhythm of the Wild, it seems like a really strong card.
Right, and if your opponent leaves back like multiple creatures so that you don't get a good value from haste, just play a creature with a +1 counter.
Yeah, for nothing.
And get a good amount of value off that. So I think Rhythm of the Wild is really powerful, and it's flexible, so you can play the game the way you need it to be played.
I think so, too. I actually want to give it a B. I know that's a lot for a card that doesn't do anything on its own, but that card is powerful.
No, I think Rhythm of the Wild is a solid B.
Before we move on, minimum creature count for a Rhythm of the Wild deck?
Probably 15? 12 or 13.
I would go higher.
I mean, it really depends on the creatures as well.
That's true. Bigger the better, right?
Yeah, you want big creatures with this.
All right, so Rhythm of the Wild gets a B. Make sure you play enough creatures for it. If you're at 11, that is not enough. Rebel Belt Runner is next. It's 1 green-red for a 3/3 Viashino Warrior at common, and it can't be blocked by tokens, by creature tokens. 3/3 for 3 with a little bit of upside. I'm in. I think this is the good spot on the curve for Gruul. I think this is going to be a C+.
Yeah, I like C plus for Robo Runner. I don't know how often the not blocked by tokens clause comes up, but it's still a 3/3 for 3.
Yeah, 3/3 for 3 in a deck like this, I think is quite good. Savage Smash, aptly named, by the way. 1 green red for a sorcery at common, and this is your fight card for the set. Target creature you control gets +2/+2 until end of turn. It fights target creature you don't control. Ouch. That's a thumper.
This card is a beating. It's often going to end up where you go like Savage Smash, kill your creature, then attack for extra damage. Mm-hmm. And it's even good enough at +2/+2 that sometimes you'll even be able to attack into other blockers despite the fact that you've taken some damage first.
Yeah, the difference between like Prey Upon and this is so big. It just it until you play it, it just doesn't stand out. But Savage Smash is going to be really good. I actually think it's like a B-. It fits so like look at this Rebel Belt Runner, next turn Savage Smash, kill your 4/4, attack you for 5. Like, boy, your opponent's going to go, are you serious? Like, this is ridiculous. So I like Savage Smash at B-.
Yeah, I would give Savage Smash a B- as well.
Holy crap. Have you seen this next one, Sunder Shaman?
I was just trying to figure out what the art was. It's really bizarre.
It is weird, but
it's red, green. This is the CCDD card, the hard to cast card. Red, green for a 5/5 giant shaman at uncommon. And it can't be blocked by more than one creature. And when it hits your opponent, destroy target artifact or enchantment that player controls.
Come on. That is insane. 5/5 for 4 that they can't double block it?
Oh, yeah. This card is very good.
Yeah. This to me, again, seems to be one of the upper crust versions of these CCDD cards. And perfect for this deck. I mean, it just works with everything that it has going on. You know, the cards that we've just seen here, these gold cards, it's just great with all of them. The Rhythm of the Wild, the Savage Smash, it's just huge. 5/5. Now, it doesn't always come down on turn 4, admittedly, but if it does, oh my God. And then it's just like upside and on upside.
Yeah, and it randomly is sniping their artifacts or enchantments.
Exactly.
I would give Sunder Shaman a B+.
Me too. B+. This thing is pushed clearly, and it's super powerful. Zerta Goblin is next. It's green-red for a 2/2 with Riot. It's uncommon. Yep.
This is just mostly going to be a 2-mana 3/3, which that's a good deal.
Yep.
I think Zerta Goblin gets a solid B and is a pretty clean, appealing card.
Same. Riot is just powerful. The hybrid card is Rubble Slinger. It is 2 and a red-green hybrid. So 3 mana for a 2/3 with reach. It's common.
Not exactly the card that Gruul wants, but I can actually see Simic being the happiest of all the combinations that touch these.
What a weird card, right? Like, it just doesn't... I thought this would have 4 power or, you know, something like that. Yeah. Instead, it's like a kind of a decently costed blocker somehow. So
it's like a decent little spider.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think
strange. C?
I think Rubble Slinger's a C.
Yeah, it's just a C. The split card is called Collision Colossus, and Collision is kind of narrow. It's 1 and a red-green hybrid for an instant that deals 6 damage to target creature with flying. So kind of sideboardy there. But I'll tell you what, Colossus, it's a reprint of another card called Colossal Might, and that card is a beating, and so is this one. It's an instant for red-green. Target creature gets +4/+2 and trample until end of turn.
Yeah, so Colossus is already a card you would always put in your red-green deck because it's 2 mana +4/+2 and trample is a huge trick. It's a really, really well costed. And then you get Collision for free, which is a nice little plummet effect, which can just kill one of the flyers out of Azorius or Orzhov or what have you, or Simic. I mean, there's 3 of the guilds have a decent access to flyers. So I think that Collision Colossus gets just a solid B for me because it's a solid combat trick with an upside removal spell attached to it.
I agree. It's a B, but when Colossal Might was printed back in the day, we used to call it Terminate.
Yeah, it was great.
They'd have to block, and then they'd always get their creature ran over, and then they'd always take 4 extra damage, and you're just like, wow. So, yeah, that card is fantastic. Okay, that's it for Gruul. That leaves us with just a couple more. We've got green and then Simic, and then a few colorless cards, although, as we saw in guilds, that's not there's not many of them.
Yeah, we should probably do blue also.
Do you want to do blue?
If we want to do all the
right.
If we want to do all the colors.
All right, maybe I'll put that on the list of cards we should do. Oh boy, where's your soundboard when you need it? Oh, good, you found it. Oh my God, our software is still not working correctly, and Luis has been diligently.
Oh, at this point, feature not a bug.
Yeah, we'll talk about it later. So we are on green though, right? Yes,
we are. We're gonna Beast. Yeah, kick things off with Axebane Beast as 3 and a green for a 3/4 Beast at common.
Kind of in for it. It's one of my favorite power and toughness combos, and it just seems like a C- or a D+.
Yeah, I think Axebane Beast is a C-. It's just a fine card.
Fine stats. What about Biogenic Upgrade?
Sounds wild. It's 4 green. It's a sorcery at uncommon. Distribute 3 +1/+1 counters among 1, 2, or 3 target creatures, and then double the number of +1/+1 counters on each of those creatures.
Wow.
So basically, this gives you 6 mana for 6 +1/+1 counters, but it has even a little bit of extra upside because if any of those creatures already had counters, those also get doubled.
Wow.
So straight up, this is 6 mana for +6/+6 permanently because they're counters.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you do a little bit of shenaniganry, you end up, maybe getting 7 or 8 counters off of this, depending on how many you had to begin with.
I mean, I'm not in love, but that is really powerful.
Yeah, I think it's strong.
Yeah.
It is a pretty solid game-ending 6-drop when you're playing like a Gruul deck and you're curving out and you're just like, all right, the 3 creatures I played the 3 prior turns each get +2/+2 permanently.
Yeah, attack you with everything. Good. Yeah, that's really strong. This probably will have somewhat of an overrun style feel to it where they play it and you feel like you could either lose if you don't block, or if you do block, you probably lose too because now your creatures aren't big enough to tussle. Yeah, this card seems good. I bet you it's a B or a B-. I don't love this type of effect, but this is really powerful.
I think Biogenic Upgrade is going to end up getting a B. I think it's just going to end a lot of games.
What about Enraged Ceratok?
This is 2 green for a 4/4 Rhino at uncommon, and it cannot be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less. So can't chump block it, can't all that easily double block it, and it's a 4 mana 4/4.
That's great.
Pretty nice little recipe there.
Yeah. In Gruul, this seems like exactly the type of card you want. I would give Enraged Ceratok a B- also. I think the stats are good, plus a relevant ability. Like they can't put 2 2/2s in front of it. That's good.
Yeah. I like B. I think just straight up B for Enraged Ceratok. Right. I think this card's going to be pretty good.
B for the Angry Rhino. Gatebreaker Ram.
So this is 2 and a green for a 2/2 sheep at uncommon.
It's a sheep.
Oh yeah, it is. It has +1/+1 for each gate you control, and if you control 2 or more gates, it has Vigilance and Trample. So you need this to basically be a 4/4 before you really start to feel paid off. So at that point, though, it's a 3 mana 4/4 Vigilance Trample, pretty good deal, and it grows over time. Every gate you play does make it bigger. So
this seems like an optional gate payoff. Like you would obviously play it in your gate deck and be quite happy.
It's not as good as the red or white gate payoffs were much better.
Yeah, but you'd play it. So Gatebreaker Ram, what if you had 2 gates in your deck?
I would not play this. I would want to play this when I had 5 gates in my deck.
Yeah, or 10 like I do it.
Yes. So at 10, it's very good.
Right. So build around for Gatebreaker Ram.
It's a build around C+.
Yeah, it's fine.
It's not critical. Basically, no one else is going to want it. So if you're the gate deck, you can try to pick this up on a wheel and be happy with it.
That's right. All right. Gift of Strength. Is this a reprint? This sounds familiar to me.
Well, no, I don't remember.
Okay, It's 1 and a green for an instant at common. It says target creature gets +3/+3 and gains reach until end of turn.
This is okay. I prefer trample to reach when it comes to this kind of trick, but having this be a nice defensive play, you're playing against Azorius and they're hitting you with one of their Sphinxes, and you're just like, all right, Gift of Strength, my 2/2 block.
Mm-hmm.
That's decent. And on offense, it's a 2 mana trick that usually will trade for their creature.
Okay. So fine. That's fine. All of these things are good. +3/+3 is a lot, regardless of the extra ability. So C for Gift of Strength.
Yeah, I like C for Gift of Strength.
Yeah, it was from Hour of Devastation.
Gotcha.
Also, Gruul Beastmaster. So this is an uncommon in Gruul. It's 3 and a green for a 2/2 with Riot. Okay, so still not great, right? Even with Riot, it's only a 3/3 for 4. But when it attacks, another target creature you control gets +X +0 until end of turn, where X is Gruul Beastmaster's Power.
It's funny because this just feels like such a red card, but
yeah, it does. Wow, you're right.
But yeah, I think it'll play all right. Like 4 mana, 2/2 haste, attack, give one of my other creatures +2/+0. Might push through some good combats. And 4 mana, 3/3 that attacks and gives a creature +3/+0. That represents 6 damage.
That's pretty good.
Which is a lot for 4 mana. Yeah. So this combines nicely with combat tricks too. If you can give this like, if you have this plus like some sort of pump spell, you can maybe just pump this pre-combat, then attack and pump something else and just put your opponent in a really bad spot.
Yeah, that does seem good. Of note, it is another target creature. So unfortunately, if this is your only creature, you can't, just start hitting for 4 or 6 or whatever.
I think it's not spectacular, but I think Gruul Beastmaster probably gets I would say a C+.
Me too. There's some power here. I haven't figured out exactly how it's going to play out, but there's something good there. Mammoth Spider's back. It's 4 and a green for a 3/5 with reach. It's common. This card tends to overperform. This is kind of a nightmare for the Flyers deck, and it's not even that bad if you need to start turning it sideways. It's kind of a good hedge at the 5 mana slot for these green decks to be able to protect themselves if they find themselves in a defensive position, but also still chip in for damage. So I like Mammoth Spider a lot. I give it a C+.
Yeah, I think Mammoth Spider has earned the C+ rating.
Yeah. Here we go. Open the gates. Green for a sorcery at common. Search your library for a basic land or gate card. Reveal it and put it in your hand. Then shuffle your library. If you're playing base green, you can substitute this in for a forest or for a land, and then go dig up a gate with it. If you're playing like 1 or 2, and then of course in the multi-gates deck, it probably does a similar role. Yeah,
it's not a card I would prioritize because I think in the average 2-color deck, you don't want to play this just because it's kind of like a split card. Like let's say you're playing Gruul. It's a split card Forest Mountain, but you need a forest to cast it.
Yes, that's true.
Which really puts you in an awkward spot. So I would say that Open the Gates is probably like a D, except if you're in the gate deck or a 3-color deck where you have the mana base necessary to support this.
Yeah, let's say you're green-red, but you're splashing for, a white card or whatever it happens to be, and you have a white gate, especially, then Open the Gate starts to look a lot better. Rampaging Rendhorn is 4 and a green for a beast. It's common, and this is super simple. It's a 4/4 with Riot.
I like this. 5 mana 4/4 haste is good when you want that, and then a 5 mana 5/5 is also good. So I think the Rendhorn just gets a C+.
Me too.
That you're going to be pretty happy with playing a couple of these.
It's super solid. Yeah, just super solid Rampaging Rendhorn. What does Regenesis do?
This is 3 green. It's an instant at uncommon. Return up to 2 target permanent cards from your graveyard to your hand. So this card's okay. It takes a little bit of setup because you need to have a couple things die first, but it gets back 2 creatures or like a creature and an aura if you depending on what you're up to. Yeah.
I don't think being an instant is particularly...
No, it being an instant is kind of weird, but I guess you can pass and then trade something off and then play it.
Man, I am not in love with this one.
No. Actually, I think this is probably closer to like a D than anything else.
Yeah, I do too. It's just so slow. I'm going to give D to Regenesis. Root Snare is back. It's 1 and a green for an instant at common. Prevent all combat damage that would be dealt this turn because Fog was just too good.
I guess so. This card is basically an F. You can say it's like a sideboard D, where if they have a bunch of like instant speed mass pump spells, maybe you side it in. But honestly, we always talk about that, and like you basically never happens.
Yeah, you're almost better off with a 2/2, like just to block one of the other ones.
Yeah, just don't play Root Snare, and you'll be in good shape. Yep. Sagittar's Volley or Sagittars Volley, I think. It's 2 and a green. It's an instant. Destroy target creature with flying. Sagittar's Volley deals 1 damage to each creature with flying your opponent's control. So.
So wipe out all the little flyers?
Yeah, kill their big flyer and all their afterlife tokens. Though if you kill a creature with afterlife, it won't then kill the tokens it makes.
Okay, that'll still be on the stack. Okay.
Yeah. This is just a straight up sideboard. It's like a sideboard B.
Totally. I mean, this is premium grade removal if there are targets. So if you're playing against Azorius or maybe even Orzhov, then Sagittar's Volley is in.
We've got a Ceruli Caretaker. It says green for an 0/3 Dryad at common with Defender, and you can tap it and tap an untap creature you control at 1 mana of any color. So, note you have to have another creature. This doesn't just tap for mana of any color.
Right.
And that makes this pretty bad. I think that there's no real reason I can have to justify this unless you're trying to play some 5-color base green deck
It doesn't
also
make
has
sense
a lot of creatures.
because you're just playing the Gates deck at that point. That's where the payoffs are for the 5 colors anyway. So yeah, Cerulean Caretaker seems kind of out of place to me.
Yeah, I would give Cerulean Caretaker an F. I don't really see a big incentive to play it.
Also awful in Gruul, right? I mean,
yeah.
What about
this one? Next one's nice.
Sauroform Hybrid? What is it? What is this guy up to?
Awesome picture. It's 1 and a green for a 2/2 human lizard warrior at common, and it has 4 green adapt 4. So
okay, so this is like a classic, right?
Yeah, we actually haven't hit an adapt card yet. So this is. It says if a creature has no +1/+1 counters on it, put 4 +1/+1 counters on it because it has adapt 4.
Yeah,
which means it's 2 mana 2/2. And then when you have 6 mana lying around, it becomes all of a sudden a 6/6. That's pretty great.
It really is. This is a common thing you see where they'll take a grizzly bear is a 1 and a green 2/2, and then slap on whatever the mechanic is for the set. But this is actually a really neat take on it because those counters are legit. I mean, this thing becomes a 6/6.
Oh yeah!
Wow. Yeah, I like Sauroform Hybrid. That's really good for a 2/2.
I think this card is going to overperform. It's just going to be a solid 2-drop in your Gruul or Simic decks that later in the game becomes your late game threat, which is exactly where you want your 2-drop to be.
Yeah, it's like a better morph.
Yeah, so I would give Sauroform Hybrid a C+. I don't think it's like, a B level card exactly, but it's a solid C+.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, everything's, they can see everything that's happening here. You're never really getting anybody with it. So, what about Silhana Wayfinder?
It says 1 and a green for a 2/1 Elf Scout at uncommon. When Silhana Wayfinder enters the battlefield, look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature land card from among them and put it on top of your library. With the rest on the bottom of your library.
Why on top?
Well, the Wayfinders were always good. This one, a step behind because this is not card advantage. It's card parity because you got a 2 mana 2/1. But if you want a land or a creature, you got to skip your next draw step to get it.
So is it free then? Am I just getting a bonus of sort of selecting the top card of my library, if I'm willing to play a 2/1 for 2?
Yeah, assuming a 2/1 for 2 is acceptable, which in most decks it is, because every limited deck can use that if it has a good enough ability, then this lets you get a little bit more consistency where you keep a 2-lander, you get to hit your 3rd land drop, and later in the game you get to just put your 6-drop on top if you can find it. So
okay.
The card's fine. Look, it's not as exciting. The previous Wayfinders tended to be card advantage where they just draw you the card.
Yeah. This
lets you find creatures as well, and it's no surprise to me that the power level is not just through the roof here because it would just be insane if you just drew the card.
Yeah, of course. They couldn't make it like that, but
yeah.
Okay, so what do we give it? I mean, is this a powerful effect? I don't really know.
No, I think Silhana Wayfinder is like a C+. Like you're happy enough to play this card in your deck, but
okay.
I don't think it's like a huge upside. It is nice that in the early game it makes you a little more consistent, and in the late game, well, it also makes you more consistent. So
yeah, and can dig you for the different things that you want at those different stages. All right. What about Steeple Creeper?
Steeple Creeper. It's a 2 and a green for a 4/2 frog snake at common. You can pay 3 and a blue to give it flying until end of turn.
Cool.
Yeah, this is a neat card. I don't think it's that good though. 3 mana 4/2 is not exactly a stat line I'm in love with, and then 4 mana to give it flying is a really expensive ability. Once you're on the plan of paying 4 to try to attack them for 4, you're kind of committed to that.
You really are. It's a lot of damage, but boy, at 2 toughness, it dies to basically all the removal spells. Yeah. Yeah, I'm afraid that Steeple Creeper is probably not super great. The 2 toughness is just so brutal, not only for the 3 mana, but also for the activated ability. Also, it's a gold card effectively.
It's a gold card if you care about the ability. You can play this without the ability if you're really hard up for a 3-drop.
Yeah, I mean, we have played cards like that. And remember, we've read at least a few cards, although are they all in black, that care about 4 power. Oh, there's the red one. There's the one,
there's
removal spell.
The Raised Boar's blessing or whatever.
Right. So maybe you play it in those spots, but I can't imagine pairing this with black. That's just not really a thing. I would give it a D+. Steeple Creeper just seems kind of narrow.
I like Steeple Creeper at D+.
Stony Strength is green for an instant at common. It says put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. Untap that creature. Boy, I know that we're trying to do a whole lot of +1/+1 counter stuff, especially in Simic, and this is a permanent addition to the card. But man, that's a pretty minimal effect for a whole card. Even if the price is right,
it's also not even straight up just a combo Simic, because imagine if you play this on your Soroform hybrid, the 2-mana 2/2, then you can't adapt it later.
Yeah, that's kind of a non-vocal.
You can't even use this to counter their adapt because it says creature you control, which is kind of funny.
Yeah.
But it does work. There's a couple Simic uncommons that give you either bonuses when you have a counter or bonuses when you gain a counter, and this does work quite well with those. So I think Stony Strength's going to end up being like a C-, where some decks will have enough extra synergies to push it over to the top.
All right, I'm going to give Stony Strength a D. I just think that a deck in and deck out, you won't be playing it. It's just too minimal. Sylvan Brushstrider is 2 and a green for a 3/2 beast at common, and when it enters the battlefield, boom, you gain 2 life. Happy beast.
This card's just okay.
It's pretty bad.
I think that Simic's a little more likely to want this because Gruul seems like it's aggressive enough that it doesn't care about the 2 life all that much, and then a 3-mana 3/2 is a little worse than you can get from elsewhere.
Yeah, I agree. I assume it's a D. I mean, this is a pretty mediocre card, all told, and doesn't seem to really fit the strategies of either of the green decks particularly well. So I would give Sylvan Brushstrider a D. Do you want to go higher on it? I mean,
I like D for the Brushstrider. It's not very good.
Ooh, Territorial Boar. He's mad. Look at him. Yeah.
This is a 1 and a green for a 2/2 Boar at common. It says whenever a creature with power 4 or greater enters the battlefield under control, Territorial Boar gets +1 and gains vigilance still in return. Not a huge payoff, right? This becomes a 3/3 vigilance when you play your 4-drop or something along those lines.
No, when you play your Steeple Creeper, man. Come on,
there we go. You got to think big.
Yeah. Not a huge fan either.
No, in an aggressive deck that has a good number of 4 power creatures, I could see this being just one of the better 2-drops. But no one else is really going to want it, which really probably makes Territorial Boar like a C-.
Probably so, yeah. Gruul only, basically. And even then, okay, fine. It's a 2-drop that has a little bit of upside. But those aren't that exciting. I mean, the Sauroform hybrid seems quite a bit better, for example. Titanic Brawl is next. It's 1 and a green for an instant. It's common. This spell costs 1 less to cast if it targets a creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it. So it costs just G in that case. Target creature you control fights target creature you don't control, and this is an instant.
So this is Pounce, but sometimes you can cast it for 1 mana.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually think this is going to end up being a lot better than Pounce was, not because it costs less, but because green actually has big creatures this time around.
Yeah, exactly. Both of the green guilds are all about not only having big creatures, but making them bigger. So, yeah, I like it.
Yeah, I think Titanic Brawl is going to end up being pretty good. It's going to end up being a C.
Yeah, C.
I think.
Sure. Yeah. These cards are always risky, but boy, when you can do it for 1 mana at instant speed, instant's a big game. So that's cool. What about Tower Defense? Isn't that a game?
It's a genre where you build all the towers when all the orcs or zombies or what have you are coming, and you have to build all your towers up.
I see. So what does it do?
Its Tower Defense is 1 and a green. It's an instant at uncommon. Creatures you control get +0/+5 and gain reach until end of turn.
Really? This is a reprint too, right?
I believe so, yes.
Yes, and I don't think it was good then, and it doesn't look good now.
No, this does not look very good. So I would give Tower Defense a D, I think.
I think so too. This is attempting to give you protection from some type of like red.
It's a really
or whatever.
Cute combo with High Alert. The Azorius card that makes your creatures deal damage equal to their toughness.
Oh my God.
Tap for 20.
You could just kill somebody with just a few creatures. I like it. Yeah, but Tower Defense is bad. By the way, it's from what was it called? Gatecrash.
Gotcha.
Trollbred Guardian.
Yep.
This is you. 4 and a green for, a 5/5 Troll Frog Warrior at uncommon. So a 5/5 for 5. Okay, I'm into that. Wow, it has Adapt 2 for only 3 mana. 2 and a green, Adapt 2. So there has to be a drawback. Each creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it has Trample.
Yeah, so this is just a 5 mana 5/5.
What?
And you can pay 3 to make it a 7/7 permanently, at which point it also gets Trample, and it can even give Trample to your other things, which turns out Trollbred Guardians are pretty solid. So,
I was looking for the downside, and I never found it. It just kept getting better and better. This card's absurd.
It is quite good. This is a premium uncommon. I don't think I give it a B+, though. I think I just give it a B.
I do. So you play it on 5, it's a 5/5. It's really tough to kill. Then you go attack you. And they're like, okay, I can't ever block it. It has adapt 2. It has trample. It's a 7/7 trampler.
I suppose it is a 7/7 trampler that's attacking them on turn 6.
Yeah. Oh, I'm in.
That's pretty big.
B+
All right,
City.
we can give Trollbred Guardian a B+.
Yeah. Also, I like the art. Wilderness Reclamation, 3 and a green for an enchantment at uncommon. At the beginning of your end step, untap all lands you control? No.
Well, this isn't F for limited, though. It could be pretty obnoxious and constructed with Nexus of Fate, but that's outside of the scope of our mission here, and I would say Wilderness Reclamation gets an F. Just don't put this card in your deck.
Yep, don't even do it. Wrecking Beast is our last green card. It is 5 green for a 6/6 Riot Trample for a common. So 7 mana. This is really expensive, but it's huge.
It is huge, but I'm trying to think of how many of these you'd want to play, and the answer is probably like 0.5, where some decks want 1, most decks want 0. That said, a 6/6 haste for 7 is pretty good.
Yeah, with Riot, so 6/6 haste trample for 7. That hits really hard. Yeah,
it's funny that the bigger the creature is, the more the Riot leads towards just giving it haste.
Yeah, that's interesting, and the trample, of course, helps too.
Well, it's funny because like a 1/1 Riot, if you put the ++1 counter on it, the number of after 5 turns, it's done way more damage.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
The bigger the creature is, the more that equation leads towards haste because after it takes a lot more turns to catch it up when you get haste initially. So
yeah, of course. And
the math does change when you have a big creature.
Yeah. Also, I mean, you were making it, you were doubling it before.
Yeah.
Now it's 1/7 of its size or whatever. So.
Yeah. So,
but this card's not great. Like, I haven't seen that much ramp in green. I don't know how easy it's going to be to get to 7 mana.
No, it doesn't look like it's
a
particularly
good finisher.
rampy color. Yeah, I think Wrecking Beast is probably like a D+ though.
Yeah, I think so too. It's still 7 mana.
Yeah. I just don't think you're going to play it all that often.
I agree. All right, Simic is this first card is really good. Aeromunculus. What does that guy do?
It's a 1 blue-green for a 2/3 flying homunculus mutant at common, and it also has 2 green-blue adapt 1. So
super solid, man.
3 mana 2/3 flying, and you can pay 4 to give a ++1 counter. Great card. I think Aeromunculus is just a solid C+. You just be happy with as many as you can get.
Yeah, wouldn't be surprised if this was the best Simic common or one of them. It's just super solid. Applied Biomancy is also a common from Simic. It's green-blue for an instant. Choose one or both. Target creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn. Does that not strike you as what? Like, how is Simic not giving counters? But anyway.
Yeah, that is a little weird.
Yeah, and then return target creature to its owner's hand.
I think this card's super good, though.
Yeah, me too. Maybe they used to have it as +1/+1 counter, and they were like,
That's probably just too good.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Imagine that you attack and are able to successfully use this to make it so your 3/3 beats their 3/3 in combat, and while you're doing so, you just get to bounce their 3-drop.
Yes.
It's just so sick.
Huge blowout. The tempo swing on that is just absurd. Yeah, Applied Biomancy is strong. I like this card a lot.
Yeah,
I also just like bounce anyway. But
I think Applied Biomancy is probably a C+. You'll just play a couple of these and be pretty happy about it.
I agree. Yeah, very good. Combine Guild Mage. What does this one do? This is the Simic version of the Guild Mages here.
Right. So it's blue-green for a 2/2, Merfolk Wizard and Uncommon. Mm-hmm. 1 and a green, tap. This turn, each creature you control enters the battlefield with an additional ++1 counter on it. So this is a pretty mana-intensive ability because what you're going to do is you're going to use this, then play your creatures, and they enter the battlefield a little buffed. The funny thing is, giving an adapt creature this ability isn't all that great because then you can't use the adapt. Mm-hmm. But the blue ability is 1 and a blue tap, move a ++1 counter from target creature you control onto another target creature you control.
Okay, so that seems good.
So yeah, you get to then move the counters around. You get to adapt one of your creatures, move the counter off to something, adapt again, that sort of thing. Move counters onto something like Shark to Crab, which we'll get to later, which will then tap down an additional creature. So there's some cool stuff going on here, and I think Combine Guildmage probably ends up getting a B- just for probably just actually a straight up B because it's a pretty good combat trick just having this in play.
It is. And the first ability is really clunky and not that important. But yeah. So B for Combine Guildmage. The Lizwiz, Frilled Mystic is next. This is green, Blue. This is a CCDD. It's a 3/2 flash, and when it enters the battlefield, you may counter target spell. Classic 2-for-1 here.
Yes, it's a Mystic Snake Returns, and it's gotten some upgrades.
Yeah, it's been working out.
Yeah, I like this. It's the CCDD casting cost on a counterspell is a little awkward because you need these cards like exactly when you want them. But the upside of this of countering a spell and getting a 3/2 to boot is pretty big.
Yeah, and the truth is that if you counter anything with it, you're happy. Like it's just counter something, get a 3/2 down. Sure, you'd prefer to be able to counter exactly the thing you want, but if you miss the window on that and get to counter something later, you're still going to be stoked. I like Frilled Mystic a lot. Again, any 2-for-1s unlimited like this are good. And then let's not forget, you can also just cast it. Like, you can change combat math. You can get an extra blocker. You can get an extra attack.
I mean, I'm never going to do that because
I agree.
That's just admitting defeat. But
I agree. I agree.
I guess technically, if you've got lethal end of turn, then maybe you can swallow your pride and actually just go ahead and do that. But in general, I think this card's not going to end up doing that part as much. But it is a nice option to have. Yeah,
it's just good to know all the options you have. Frilled Mystic for me is a B-. I look, the casting cost is really tough, and it's not like an amazing body for the 4 mana, but the 2-for-1's really good, and I would play it in all my blue-green decks.
Yeah, I think that this is going to end up being like a B. I don't think Frilled Mystic is high enough. I guess the casting cost versus impact doesn't make me want this at the same rate as some of the really good CCDD cards.
Yeah. What about Galloping Lizrog?
First of all, I'm kind of disappointed this doesn't have haste because it's literally galloping.
It is galloping.
It's 3 blue-green for a 3/3 frog lizard at uncommon. It's got trample. And when it enters the battlefield, you may remove any number of ++1 counters from one creature you control. If you do, put twice that many ++1 counters on Galloping Lizrog.
Sweet. That is cool, man.
I may have overfed him is the flavor text.
So you can get, a 5/5 or a 6/6, or actually you can't get a 5 or a 6/6, can you?
No, you can get a 5/5 or a 7/7 or like an 11/11 if you've got a couple counters laying around.
Yeah, and then like you mentioned before with the Guild Mage, you can you can then readapt later on if the Lizrog doesn't actually end the game for you. This seems really good to me. Like, and that's again key here. It has trample, so it actually really does pay you off for putting all those counters onto one spot.
Yeah, I think the Lizrog's pretty cool. You need to have counters, though, because by itself it's bad. But if you remove just one counter, you probably got a good deal. 5 mana, 5/5 trample at the cost of a counter. And if you're getting such a good rate on the counters. If you can remove 2 or 3, then this becomes a real big threat.
Yeah, and I mean, it is a little eggs basket one, but you're really incentivized to do that, right? I mean, you're just getting double trouble on all the counters, so do it. One theme I've seen here in Simic, by the way, is just that it seems very mana intensive, right? Like
yes.
Each thing we've looked at is just like, well, if you have enough mana, and this is a similar one.
Right, if you have enough counters that you spent mana to get.
Exactly. But for the Lizrog, I like it at B. I mean, this card just seems very strong to me.
I think I'd like it at B-. I could see it requiring a bit of a setup, having a little bit of vulnerability.
Fair enough. Growth Spiral, speaking of mana, green-blue for an instant at common. Draw card. You may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield.
Yeah, this is a cool card. It's going to be hard to really maximize it because it costs exactly blue-green, which means in your double forest or double island draws that where you don't have the other color right away, when you cast this turn 5, you're not really going to get to the extra bonus very often.
You're basically just cycling it at that point.
So it just becomes a cycling card. But the upside is if you do hit this on turn 2, it's just a nice little ramp spell, and it does always cycle. So I think Growth Spiral gets a C, and not a card I'm excited about, but it's a card that can do some work.
Agreed. Gyre Engineer, we just mentioned the need for mana. Well,
this one's nice.
We have found our engineer. Yeah, 1 green-blue for a 1/1. Yikes. It's uncommon as well. You're not going to see these around that often, but it taps to add green-blue.
This card's really solid.
Yeah, that's so much mana.
If it survives, it's a 2-for-1 because you're tapping, it's essentially 2 lands. And you can always chump block with it or what have you. So I think Gyre Engineer is going to get B.
I do too. And remember, you're going from turn 3 to turn 6 worth of mana the next turn if you hit your land drop. So that is scary. And with all the places that we've seen to spend that mana, Gyre Engineer gives you the free activation on your Guild Mage. So now you can just pay regular price for your creature and get the counter, etc. So yeah, a lot of places to pay that mana. You mentioned him earlier, Shark to Crab.
This is 2 blue-green for a 4/4 fish octopus crab at uncommon. It is 2 blue-green, adapt 1. Mm-hmm. And it says, whenever one or more +1/+1 counters are put on Shark to Crab, tap target creature an opponent controls. If that creature doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step. So by itself, it's a 4-mana 4/4 that you can then pay 4 to make it a 5/5 and tap down their biggest creature and lock it down for a turn. But it combines really nicely with all the cards that put counters on it, because every time it gets counters, it taps down a creature.
That's insane.
Yeah, so I think Shark to Crab is excellent. It's by itself very good and has a couple nice little combos. So I would give this a B+, I think.
I think you're right. This color pair, the biggest weakness with it is removal, right? It just doesn't get access to even like the good fight card that we saw. It does get the worst fight card, but not the red-green one, for example. And this actually can act as removal because you're going to have the big creatures to finish the game. So Shark to Crab gets a B+. That is great. The hybrid card is called Scuttlegator. It is 4 and a green, blue hybrid, so 6 mana total. It's a crab, turtle, crocodile, because they just randomly generate these at some point.
Yeah.
It is a common. It's a 6/6 with Defender. You can pay 6 and 2 blue-green hybrid, so 8 mana to adapt 3, which makes it a 9/9 Defender. As long as Scuttlegator has a +1/+1 counter on it, it can attack as though it didn't have Defender.
So a 6-mana 6/6 Defender is okay, but not great. But the fact that you can later upgrade this to a 9/9 and then get to attack with it, and if you don't want to spend 8 on that, you can use, one of the various ways to put a +1/+1 counter on it, at which point you kind of get to unlock it for free.
Mm-hmm. That actually seems fine to me.
Yeah, it's fine. It's the kind of card a control deck wants, because a 6-mana 6/6 Defender can keep your opponents at bay for a few turns, then you just pay the 8 once you have the board stable and start attacking with your 9/9.
Right, and that's just extremely difficult.
Don't really want multiples of these most of the time, so I would imagine the first one's fine, which kind of makes it like a C-.
Yeah, I think it's a C- for Scuttlegator. Last card for, for any of our guilds, as it turns out, even though we did decide at the last minute to do blue, is Incubation Incongruity. Incubation is a blue-green hybrid for a sorcery. It says, look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature card from among them, put it in your hand, put the rest on the bottom in a random order. So kind of not that great. And then it's okay, right? But it's like whatever. And then Incongruity is 1 green blue for an instant at uncommon still. Exile target creature. So there's something coming. That creature's controller creates a 3/3 green frog lizard creature token.
This is a case where you needed both halves to get it across the finish line, because I don't think either half is a card I would just put in my deck, but the split card is probably good enough, because in a pinch, you do want to be able to exile their 5/5 flyer and turn it into a 3/3. And if you're not in a situation where you have to do that, paying 1 mana to look at your top 5 and pull a creature out is a fine card.
Yeah, I think so too. This one's tough to grade, because these cards tend to underperform the Incongruity style cards.
Yes, they are not good.
Right. But they're also like the thing that you get in color pairs like this, and sometimes you're just happy to have it.
I still think this is going to end up being like a C.
Yeah, it really isn't that strong compared to some of the ones that we've seen. I was kind of hoping for a little bit more. But, worst case, you Incubation, you have enough creatures, and you just kind of move on with your life. Okay, one more color, and then there's actually only a few colorless cards. Blue, Arrester's Admonition is 2 and a blue for an instant at common. Return target creature to its owner's hand. Okay, I'm interested, but that's a lot of mana to pay for that ability. Addendum, if you cast a spell during your main phase, draw a card. I am in for that one. Yeah,
this is going to be solid. It's going to be kind of like Crashing Tide from Rivals of Ixalan, and where you're just going to pay 3 at sorcery speed to bounce creature and draw a card, and that's totally okay. The kind of like fallback emergency mode of just casting this as an instant is fine too, because if you have to cast it there, you probably really needed to cast it there.
Yeah, and I think one way to think about it is you probably got a card worth of value by waiting if the situation dictated it anyway. Right. So you're going to get your card either way. And in that case, that's just great.
Yeah.
So I like Arrester's Admonition. I think it's a C+. Like, I'm not going nuts for it, but I really like it. I think I'll run quite a few of them.
Yeah, I think it's probably a C+ as well. It's pretty close to being a C, though.
Yeah, it interacts with... Yeah, I agree. Chillbringer. Boy, the biggest, frostiest cat ever. This is 4 and a... excuse me, 4 and a blue for a 3/3 flying elemental at common. And when it enters the battlefield, you tap target creature an opponent controls, and it doesn't untap during its controller's next
I like this.
Yes.
5 mana, 3/3 flyer that locks down their creature for a turn? Like that is a pretty good value card. It really just is. Good defensively and good in a race. So plus it's a 5 mana 3/3 flyer is good in a board stall. There's not really any situation where this is bad, barring the I'm stuck on 4 situation.
Yeah, this could be a B-. I mean, look, we have traditionally played 2 powered 2/2s for 3 to get this effect, where we never want to play a 2/2 for 3 normally.
Right. And a 5 mana 3/3 flyer is not that much worse than what you would expect to pay for. So
yeah,
I would say Chillbringer at B- is actually reasonable. The thing is, even though you don't usually want tons of 5s, having multiples of these is still pretty good. Play this, lock down your creature. Next turn they do something, you're like, play this, lock down your creature, attack for 3, and you just put them so far behind.
Yeah, next turn you take 6, and that creature's been out of commission for 3 turns in a row. B- for Chillbringer. Nice one. Clear the Mind, something we all could do sometimes. 2 and a blue for a sorcery at common, excuse me. Here we go. Target player shuffles their graveyard into their library. Draw a card.
The only reason I'm using this is to prevent myself from decking in my control deck, but that I will not recommend that to the general public. I would say Clear the Mind's pretty much like an F, or D-, whatever.
Maybe a sideboard card or something. But
yeah, not something you should be aiming to play.
No, if your opponent is playing Rakdos and you have Clear the Mind, you're going to be very unhappy. Code of Constraint is next. Sounds like an Azorius card to me. 2 and a blue for an instant and uncommon. Target creature gets -4/-0 until end of turn. Draw a card. Interesting. Addendum, if you cast a spell during your main phase, tap that creature and it doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step. Wow. They kind of piled it on this thing.
Well, it's actually kind of funny where this is actually a split card because target creature gets -4/-0 until end of turn. Doesn't do anything if you're actually using the addendum.
Oh, yeah. That's funny.
So you're getting to choose which mode you want. This card's good. It's pretty similar to Arrester's Admonition, which is kind of funny. They're both like 3 mana, remove a creature, draw a card. But I think Code of Constraint's going to end up being good because it's a nice combat trick if you need it at -4/-0 and still 2 for 1 there. And then if you need to remove a blocker, you can do that too. So I like Code of Constraint. Code of Constraint is at C+.
Okay, I agree. Yeah, the upside being that you can sometimes get into combat and then shrink down their creature and actually kill it rather than just bounce it like the Admonition. Yeah. Coral Commando is 2 and a blue for a 3/2.
Yep, no abilities.
Yeah,
so this looks like a D.
Yeah. Essence Capture is next. It is blue for an instant and uncommon. Counter target creature spell. Put a +1/+1 counter on up to 1 target creature you control.
Yeah. This is nice.
Sure.
Blue to counter a creature is a little difficult, but I do, you're not going to have double blue when you want it every time. But if you can counter a creature for 2 mana and then give one of your creatures +1/+1, that's a pretty good deal. Yeah,
I think so too. I mean, we play Essence Scatter pretty routinely, and this is not that, but it does have some upside for the extra cost.
Yeah, this is overall worse than Essence Scatter, but it does have an actual upside if you can cast it. That probably makes Essence Capture a C.
Yeah, it's probably a C. Especially in sealed, like you're just going to run a bunch of these. Eyes Everywhere, and that is exactly what's happening in the picture. 2 and a blue for an enchantment at uncommon. At the beginning of your upkeep, scry 1. Okay, and then you can pay 5 and a blue to exchange control of Eyes Everywhere and target non-land permanent. Activate this ability only time you could cast a sorcery.
Yeah, if they didn't put the sorcery clause on, there used to be a weird trick you could do with these where if you have 12 mana, you target your own thing, then you target their thing, and it switches, then switches again, and you end up with their thing and an Eyes Everywhere, and they end up with one of your lands.
Okay, that's kind of sweet.
Yeah,
but in this case, that doesn't work.
It doesn't because of the sorcery ability.
Right. So then what? So if you do make the exchange, they do get Eyes Everywhere and they get the scry ability. And if they can pay blue, they can actually switch back, right?
If they're not playing blue, though, then you pay to pretty expensive control magic, but stealing your opponent's creature even for 9 mana is still a pretty effective line of play. Especially
how much
3
does
plus 6 is not as hard as 9.
Right. How much does it affect your thought process though that they get an ice everywhere?
Them scrying one a turn does matter.
It's something.
Yeah, and if they're playing blue, this could be disastrous because then they just pay to switch it back, and you're in this weird like arms race where you're just paying mana every turn. I
don't even want to do that. Yeah, I'm kind of maybe sideboard this thing in or something. I definitely don't want to do it if my opponent can just give it back to me.
This card looks like a mediocre sideboard card to me because I don't want to pay 3 mana just to get a scry 1, but I also don't really want to pay 3 plus 6 to steal their creature and give them scry 1 for the rest of the game.
Yeah, I don't either. No, I'm not into it.
This looks like a D or maybe a sideboard C if they have some like really monstrous creatures and are playing blue.
Yeah, it's such a tough sell because then you have to cast this just to get it on the battlefield, which means you're taking more damage. Yeah, Eyes Everywhere is not really doing it for me. I say a D. Fairy Duelist is next. It's 1 on a blue for a 1/2 flash flying fairy rogue at common. When it enters the battlefield, target creature an opponent controls gets -2/-0 until
This card's really cute. I think it's pretty funny. I like this card. I would probably play it every time. It's just easy to get a nice little like 1.5 for 1. I say 1.5 because you end up with a 1/2 flyer, which isn't like a full card. But if you can like play this and double block their, now 0/2 creature or now 1/3 creature, or you're 4/4 attacks into their 4/4 and you're like Fairy Duelist, bam. That all seems pretty cool.
Yeah. It's probably worth a card most of the time, right?
I would say so.
I mean, it's approaching it at least. I'd still give this thing a C- or something. I'm not.
I would give Fairy Duelist a C. I think it's a solid little creature.
Okay. Gateway Sneak. What is that?
I like this one. It's 2 in a blue for a 1/3 Vidalcan Rogue at uncommon. Whenever a gate enters the battlefield under your control, Gateway Sneak can't be blocked this turn. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, draw a card.
Ooh, hello.
So this is another very good gate payoff where you're just like Gateway Sneak, gate attack, draw a card. Next turn, gate attack, draw a card. Like if you're going to get 1 card out of this, you're ahead, and it's not that hard to imagine getting like 2.
It's a guild summit that can block.
Yes, that is essentially what it is.
I love it, obviously. But again, we are now once again pretty firmly in the only goes in the gates deck here. So.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
So it's a builder on B, though. I think it's really good in the gate deck.
I agree. Here,
Homunculus.
That's a great name. 4 in a blue for a 2/5 hexproof homunculus at common.
I think this card is going to end up being solid. I don't think it's particularly strong without modifications, without auras. And there's not that many auras running around. But it is nice that you can just tap out for this and your opponent can't do anything to it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I can't help but compare it to Wishcoin Crab. And when I do that, one of the things that's great about Wishcoin Crab, a 2/5, is that it is really hard to kill. Like hexproof aside, 5 toughness was kind of this magic number that made it much more difficult to kill. Here, I'm paying a whole extra mana, which is a lot. And I'm getting a card that's slightly more hard to kill. I don't know, man.
Yeah.
Homunculus, I might be not super impressed by.
I think in the average deck, it's probably like a D.
Yeah, and I think so too. I think this is a classic.
And if you have some nice combos with it, which I don't really know what that looks like, but if you do, then maybe it gets upgraded.
There you go. Persistent Petitioners is 1 in a blue for a 1/3 human advisor at common. You can pay 1 mana and tap it to have target player put the top card of their library into their graveyard. And then it gets a little weird. You can tap 4 untapped advisors you control. And yes, Persistent Petitioners is an advisor. And target player puts the top 12 cards of their library into their graveyard. And then a deck, this isn't relevant for us, but a deck can have any number of cards named Persistent Petitioners.
Which is already true and limited, just so you know.
Yes, that is true.
This card is a complete joke. It's probably an F. But it will be fun to try to assemble like 6 of these in Tron, because if you get 4 out, you're going to kill your opponent in like 2 turns.
Yeah, I mean, it does mill you out extremely quickly.
There might be a couple other advisors. Maybe not. I wouldn't be surprised if there was 0 other advisors in the set.
Now, one thing did happen, though. I played against Gavin Verhey on camera, and I brought this in against him because we were playing the sealed Azorius mirror where we both had the information campaign and that kind of stuff going.
Sure. And it was like a really bad milk card.
Yeah. Like I was like, we almost decked ourselves just naturally. Mm-hmm. And I thought, this actually kind of does work. Also, he mentioned to me that he had a big hand in designing that card. So I really just wanted to beat him with his own card.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But I didn't draw it. I just beat him the good old fashioned way. Whatever. This is like terrible.
So was that a story to help us evaluate persistent practitioners, or was just like a really long-winded way of saying that you beat Gavin Verhey, someone who used to play professional Magic many years ago and now works on designing Magic cards, so probably doesn't play quite as much. But anyways, what was it?
It was one of those things. This card's like a D- or a sideboard D.
Yes, I think it's like an F.
Yeah.
I actually don't even think it's a good sideboard card.
All right. I'll let you, just for that little comment, I'll let you read the next one just to kind of palate cleanser.
Prying Eyes is 4 blue. It's an instant at common. Draw 4 cards, then discard 2 cards.
Mm-hmm. Not too bad.
No. This is like the kind of card at common that makes me think control decks might be good, because powerful common card draw is not something you see very often. And even though you have to discard 2 cards, drawing 4 cards is a lot.
Yeah. And late in the game, it'll often be 2 lands or, 2 cards that don't have a big impact on the game, and you'll keep the 2 cards that are really good. Still, 6 mana is a heck of a lot to pay.
Oh, yeah.
I will be paying it frequently, I hope.
Yeah, I think you could play 2 of these and get away with it if you have enough cheap removal. At least that's my plan.
Man, you're greedy. Is it a C-? Like, this card is extremely expensive.
Prying Eyes is not for the faint of heart. I think it's a C-. It's the kind of card you really have to build your deck to maximize, but it is powerful once you do. That much is true.
By the way, just for those dreamers, for the persistent petitioners, there is one other advisor in the set, and it's rare.
Oh, there we go.
So there you go. Terramander.
This is a potential modern and legacy card people are looking at, but we'll see what it's got for limited. It's blue for a 1/1 Salamander Drake on common with flying. So 1 mana, 1/1 flying. Be still my beating heart. And you can pay 7 and a blue to adapt it 4.
8 mana. Okay.
But this ability costs 1 less for every instant or sorcery in your graveyard. So
what a weird card.
I think this card's good because if you have...
Why does it care about instants and sorceries?
That I don't know. Okay, if you have 2 instants and sorceries, it's a 1 mana, 1/1 flyer, and you can pay 6 mana to just level it up to a 5/5. I think that's
to a dragon.
Yeah, I think that's good enough. And it's not hard to imagine having 2 instants and sorceries by the time you want to do this. So
no, totally.
Plus, look, as much as we rail against 1 mana, 1/1 flyers with no other abilities, when it has a very powerful late game ability, it really does justify it. And if it's in your opening hand, it'll just attack them 5 times in the air before they do anything about it.
Yeah, you'll take it. I've always liked that. It's just I don't usually want to pay the cost.
You need a little bit more legs in the late game, and this has that. So yes. I think Terramander probably gets like C+.
Yeah, C+. And we'll see how often we end up actually activating it. But I think your hunch is right. What does Quench do?
Quench is 1 and a blue. It's the instant at common. Counter target spell unless its controller pays 2. So Mana Leak has been deemed too good, and I agree. I think Quench is okay. I like it more out of the board against like, high curve Gruul or something along those lines.
Yeah, me too.
Decks that just, they have good 5s and 6s. Because yes, in your opening hand, this is a great 2-drop. It just counters their 2-drop on the play or 3-drop on the draw. But when you draw this on turn 9 and they just have 7 lands in play, you might just never get to use it again.
And that's a major cost to pay. I mean, you can obviously nab things while they're curving out. But it's just like when you draw this later, that doesn't happen. I need to see Quench get played, but 2 to me is such a huge difference from 3. I'm not a big fan of it.
I would say Quench is probably a C-.
Yeah, I have it in the D+. I have it at D+, C-. I'm really not that excited about it. Not that it's unplayable or anything. Just not exciting. And it's also trivially easy to play around once the format matures and you just go, okay, well, I'll just adapt instead this turn, go. Yeah. Right? And it's like, okay. Sage's Rose Savant is 1 and a blue for a 2/1. When it enters the battlefield, you scry 2. It's a common.
Not bad.
Yeah, that's fine.
I don't think that there's any deck where I would look at this and think, oh, this doesn't fit at all. Like you could just put this in any deck and it's going to be fine. So
yeah, I agree.
Kind of a textbook C.
Yeah. C for Sage's Rose Savant, fine magic card. Senate Courier is 2 and a blue for a 1/4 with flying. It's a bird. 1/4 flyer for 3 mana. It does have upside, though it's minimal. It has an activated ability of 1 and a white. It gets vigilance until end of turn. So you can slam in for 1.
Yeah, this is not a gold card. Like a lot of these cards that have off-color activations are essentially gold cards. This is not, because this activated ability is just not even good. But
it's not.
A 3 mana 1/4 flyer is good. I would almost always just play that. So I think Senate Courier gets a C, and you basically can disregard the white ability.
Yeah, I think so too. Also, is this a card we want to try out with that power and toughness switcher thing?
Or no, because I just don't really want to put that card in my deck. But if it comes down to it, I guess Senate Courier does the trick.
All right. Shimmer of Possibility is 1 and a blue for a sorcery at common. Look at the top 4 cards of your library. Put one of them in your hand and the rest on the bottom in a random order.
Yeah, this card's sweet. I think this is the kind of card we always talk about where if you have the room, putting one in your deck is going to be fine. Because it's a good way to use turn 2 or just 2 mana at any point in the game when you don't have anything else going on. But often you're just going to end up building your deck and at the end be like, I guess I just didn't have room for this Shimmer of Possibility. So
always happens. Always. Like in my mind, Shimmer is actually a D because it's so hard. Like, what are you cutting? Are you cutting a Sage's Rose Savant for this? No. Are you cutting a Senate Courier? No. Are you cutting a Quench? Maybe.
You're just looking at all the cards next to this in alphabetical order.
But they're also all the 2 mana 1 and a blues, as it turns out. I'm going to give it a D. I think it's a perfectly playable Magic card. I just don't think it makes the cut as often as people think it does.
Yeah, I think that logic makes sense. I think it's probably like a C minus, but just as a point of fact, you're just not going to play it that often.
Right. Skatewing Spy. What does that do?
This is 3 and a blue for a 2/3. It's a Vidalcan Rogue Mutant and uncommon. And you can pay 5 and a blue to adapt 2. It also says each creature you control, the +1/+1 counter on it, has flying. So,
wow.
4 mana 2/3, not great. You can pay 6 mana to make it a 4/5, at which point it begins flying, and it's passively giving flying to a lot of your other creatures. So,
love it.
Yeah, Skatewing Spy is quite good. Would you give this a B minus?
Yeah, I would give it a B.
All right, I'll give this a B minus.
Okay, because I think it's going to be like a bomb in the Simic deck. Like I think you're going to play it, and 3 of your creatures now have flying, and you're going to attack with them.
Yeah,
and then your opponent's going to be like, crap.
If you've adapted 3 of your creatures, like they're already going to be pretty big, though.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder. Like, this goes back to the discussion with the counter or the combat trick that puts a +1/+1 counter on your creature.
Right.
Like,
that justifies this more. Or vice versa. But I think Skatewing Spy is quite good. So we're quibbling over B minus versus B here.
All right. Skitter Eel is 3 and a blue for a 3/3 fish crab at common, and it has 2 and a blue, adapt 2.
Yeah.
Sure.
I like this. This is the kind of card where you're happy enough playing at 4 mana 3/3. You wouldn't just play that, but knowing that you can make this into a 5/5 whenever you want goes so long or so far in making this just a card I actively want in my deck, which leaves us as a C still, but it's just a good quality card.
Yeah, this is also a prime example of threat of activation. It's only 3 mana, so you're just like attack it, and your opponent's sitting there with a 4/4. They can't block it.
Right.
Sure, take 3, cast something else. Skitter Eel gets a C. Slime Bind is 1 and a green. Excuse me, 1 and a blue for an enchantment aura at common. It's flash. It enchants a creature, and the creature gets -4/-0. How close to this is removal? I mean, this is like make a creature defender kind of.
It's closest to make a creature defender, or closer there than anything else. I think Slime Bind's good. I would like it more in a deck full of evasion, or
this just seems prime for
or a control deck. So it doesn't fit into every single deck, but the decks that want this effect, it's just going to be, it's a good way to deal with their 2-drop. You also get to like pass turn 2, in your control deck. Then when they play their 2-drop, end of turn Slime Bind it, untap, play your 3-drop. So
no, that's true. Also block. They go for a combat trick. You Slime Bind in response. Yep. Like this all works.
So I think Slime Bind gets a C.
Okay, C for Slime Bind. Yeah, it actually looks like it's going to serve its role, and I think it'll be really good in Azorius because you just like lock down something on the ground and hit him in the air. Swirling Torrent. This card's powerful. It's 5 and a blue for a sorcery at uncommon. Choose one or both. Put target creature on top of its owner's library. Put return target creature to its owner's hand.
Yeah, this card's really annoying.
Yeah, it's super powerful.
Bounce your one of your creatures, put the other on top. So you're not down a card because you traded this for their draw step, and you paid 6 mana to bounce 2 of their creatures. Seems like a good deal to me. I would say Swirling Torrent's probably like C+, maybe even B-. Like if you play this on one of the creatures they've invested in with like Adapt or something, that's really big.
Mm-hmm. So I did play this card in my sealed deck, and I'm on the C- end. I thought I was going to be in the B- to B range for a card this powerful, but it did actually still feel like a little tricky to find the spot to use it correctly.
I will say it's worse in sealed than in draft.
Good point.
Because
that's true.
Bounce cards tend to be better in draft because the games are a little faster and not all about card economy.
And on top of it, I also was playing Azorius Control, where this is way better in Simic.
Yes.
So I probably was in the worst case scenario for it, and it was still good. All right, B- it is for Swirling Torrent. That is just a lot of power. Thought Collapse, great name. 1 blue for an instant. At common, counter target spell, its controller puts the top 3 cards of their library into their graveyard.
This is essentially cancel.
Text.
But,
yeah, it's just cancel.
But I guess you could maybe deck them out between this card and actually the next card. So I think Thought Collapse probably gets looks like a D+ for me, actually.
It is for me too. I think cancel seems slow.
This format looks a little faster, so I would not want to be running around with cancel. So D+ for Thought Collapse.
Now, what about Wall of Lost Thoughts? You just mentioned it.
It's 1 and a blue for an 0/4 wall at uncommon. It has Defender, and then when it enters the battlefield, target player puts the top 4 cards of their library into their graveyard.
That is a lot of cards.
Yeah, if this was common, I would be a little more excited. At uncommon, you're just not really going to have this deck come together. So I think that leaves Wall of Lost Thoughts at basically like an F.
It's basically an F. Yeah, 4 cards is a lot. It's 10% of your original starting. But if that's all you do, it's meaningless. You've basically just randomized part of your opponent's library. So nothing. Windstorm Drake is our last blue card. What does it do?
It's 4 and a blue for a 3/3 flyer at uncommon. It's a Drake. And other creatures you control with flying get +1/+0. So a lot.
That's really strong.
Yeah, it's a lot less impressive than the white 2/4 for 4 because 5 mana 3/3 is worse than those stats. But on the other hand, giving all your flyers +1/+0 means if you just play this and get an extra 2 points of damage in, you've just put your opponent on a pretty fast clock.
Yeah, that's really strong, I think. And there's a lot of common flyers in the set too. So to me, that card's it's probably a B. I mean, maybe a B-, but
I think it's a B-.
Okay, we'll say B- for that. That moves us to the last little stretch here. We've got a couple of lands. There's 2 cycles, though, that take up most of these slots. So the first one for the artifacts is the Lockets. They're back. Each guild gets one. I'll read Azorius Locket as an example, but the rest are all the same. Azorius Locket is 3 mana for an artifact. It taps for blue or white. It's common. You can pay 4 mana in any combination of blue and or white mana and tap it and sack it to draw 2 cards. So what we found out in the old one is that these did see some play. They did exist. They just weren't great. So which deck wants these? And the one that stands out to me is Gruul and Simic. Those are the ones that seem like they're really mana hungry to me.
And I would say Azorius, but Azorius has the Sphinx card, the 4 mana draw 2, which means that the Locket and that kind of overlap enough that I'm not even sure which one's better and how many copies you want of them.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the spell is much, much better in this case.
Honestly, I could see everyone but Rakdos being pretty happy with the Locket in this set.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Orzhov seems medium on it to me. What are their big mana sinks? Simic has mana sinks built in, and Gruul has just a high curve.
More that Orzhov doesn't have as much to do in the late game. So
get some cards.
Yeah, you can just use this as card draw.
Okay. So there you go. You have it. We think it's going to be Simic and Gruul and then Orzhov, perhaps Azorius, and then really not Rakdos for the Lockets.
And honestly, they're in the D to C- range. If you wanted them, you can usually pick them up.
Yeah, the fact that they saw play was kind of the threshold for them. The next card, I love this card. It's called Gate Colossus. This thing is nasty.
Yeah.
It's 8 colorless mana or 8 generic mana or whatever for an 8/8 artifact creature constructed uncommon. Here's the deal. It costs 1 less to cast for each gate you control. It cannot be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less. If you play this card at the pre-release, Don't forget this. You will forget.
Yeah.
And somebody's going to throw some stupid 2/1 in front of your creature, and you're going to go, no, you take 8. And on top of all that, it's whenever a gate enters the battlefield under your control, you may put gate Colossus from your graveyard on top of your library. Now, that's not card advantage, but this thing is unstoppable. It's awesome. Yeah. It's so good.
This is a great finisher for the gate deck. Comes out for like 5 mana, and then if they kill it, you can just like play a gate, play it for 4 mana.
Yeah, I played it for 4 mana.
Yeah,
it doesn't seem that hard to do that. I was running 6 gates in a duel, but still, and I got lucky. But still, you can do it. Also, it has a bunch of neat stuff, like you can play your gate first, and then that just reduces it by 1, even though the gate's tapped, and then tap the rest of your mana to cast it. The play pattern is they go, okay, fine, and they put 2 or 3 big creatures in front, and you go, cool, kill all of them, play a gate, put it on top of my library, your move. Like, keep gates in your hand if you can already cast your gate Colossus. That's a big deal, because getting it back is a way that you're going to end up winning the game. And then it's huge, and they can't put their normal creatures in front. So it's good. This card, to me, it really blew my mind. I put it in my deck kind of reluctantly, and it ended up being one of my better cards.
Yeah, it looks like a build around B to me.
Agreed. Yes. Build around B for Gate Colossus. Really good card. Junk Troller is 4 mana for an 0/6 artifact creature golem. It's uncommon. It has Defender. You can tap it to put target card from a graveyard on the bottom of its owner's library. What?
Yeah, this card is basically a D. If you want a 4 mana 0/6, it does the trick. It also, in some really pondering or plotting control decks, can you use it to make it so you don't deck, but that's really not a big consideration.
Yeah, I think the key word here is junk. Next card is called Scrabbling Claws. It's 1 mana for an artifact. It's uncommon. You can tap it to have target player exile a card from their graveyard, and you can pay a mana and sacrifice it to exile target card from a graveyard and draw a card.
Yeah, so not a card that really matters in limited.
Just an F.
Sideboard C if they have some graveyard stuff.
Sure, and even though they don't, right? Screaming Shield is next. It is 1 mana for an artifact equipment at uncommon. Equipped creature gets +0/+3 and has 2 tap. Target player puts the top 3 cards of their library into their graveyard, and the equip cost is 3.
So this is a mill win condition, because by itself
you could actually win with this.
By itself you can mill them out, but the fact that it costs 2 and tap the creature, not just tap the creature, is really limiting, because if it was just 1 mana, 3 to equip, and you can just start going for it, you could really clock your opponent with this. You have to spend 2 mana every time you want to use this. Makes me think this is probably closer to a D than a C.
Yeah, I could see this being an alternate win condition in like an Orzhov deck or an Azorius deck that could really get control, where you could. So how does the play pattern work? You equip it. You say go, you pay the 2. This is late in the game. You pay the 2 mana, you mill them, you untap, you pay the 2 mana, you mill them, you equip it, and then you pay the 2 mana, you mill them. So it's 7 mana.
7 mana you can mill.
Big turnaround. Man, that's really expensive. Yeah, but it does give you inevitability, and you don't need to attack your opponent at any point. Yeah, I think it's closer to a D for Screaming Shield, but I'm going to get somebody with that a lot. This last card is weird because it's gold, but it's also colorless to cast. It's called Sphinx of the Guild Pact. It's 7 mana for a 5/5 flyer that is all colors. It's an uncommon. It also has hexproof from monocolor.
So monocolored spells or abilities that your opponent's control can't target this.
Yes.
Yeah, this card is going to be pretty swingy, because if your opponent has, like the Rakdos removal spell or the Azorius enchantment, it just kills or locks us down, and you spent 7 mana and traded for something that costs much less. But if they just happen to have Consigned to the Pit, the mono black removal spell instead, all of a sudden they're just like, oh, I can't even target that. So it's really going to be high variance as to how good this is, but my guess is it's a good control finisher.
Okay. I agree. Look, a 5/5 flying,
5/5
card
flying
is just something
big.
It's just big. Yeah. So, but it's not great, right?
No.
Like
I would say
it's difficult.
Sphinx of the Guild Pack's probably like a C+. Yeah.
Yeah, C+. All right. When it comes to the lands, it's really straightforward if you play the last set. So there's 1 guild gate for each guild. That is a guild gate enters the battlefield tapped. taps for 1 mana of either color. So, for example, Azorius Guildgate is a land gate that enters the battlefield tapped and taps for blue or white. And there's one for Gruul, Orzhov, Rakdos, and Simic as well. And by the way, these are important. There's one in every pack. They enable the gate deck that we've been talking about, and they should go in even your 2-color decks. If you're Azorius and you can play, if you can get your hands on 2 guild gates, play them. Even the 3rd one is fine.
Yes.
It just makes your mana way better. And you should probably pick them over cards you're realistically not going to play anyway, just to make your mana that much better. And then there's also Gateway Plaza, which is another card that was in Guilds of Ravnica, and it enters the battlefield tapped, and you have to pay 1 mana when it enters the battlefield, or else you sacrifice it. And it's a gate as well, and it adds 1 mana of any color. So that's a good one for the 5-color deck. And usually you don't run Gateway Plaza in your 2-color decks. No. But the gates they're like C's or something. Like they're better than
they're like C pluses. I think you functionally are going to be taking them over a lot of playables, because you just having 2 guild gates makes your mana better. And if you're 3 colors, like, Azorius and Orzhov look like they're pretty natural pairings. So, picking up like an Orzhov guild gate when you're drafting Azorius so you can splash a good Orzhov card really does help. So
yeah. All right, that's going to do it. That is everything here for the Ravnica Allegiance Commons and Uncommon set review show. Thank you so much for hanging out with us for the duration here. We know there's a lot of cards to get through, but we got to get you ready for your pre-release and your release and all the drafts and everything you're going to do going forward. Of course, these are our initial takes. If you want to get the full story, come back and listen. Next week, we're going to cover the rares and mythic rares in the same fashion. And then the week after that, it's our first impression show where we've actually got to do pre-releases and drafts and get our hands on the cards online and in real life. And then you're going to get updates to all these cards, the ones that overperformed and underperformed and all that kind of stuff. And that's the week after the set review rare and mythic rare, which is coming out next week. This show is brought to you, of course, by Channel Fireball. Oh, God. He's done. It's brought to you by channelfireball.com. The place to go online for all things Magic related. If you want to sell your cards back to them, this is highly recommended. You can go on there and they'll give you a 30% trade-in bonus if you do it for store credit, or you can just get cash. This is a great way to get a box of the new set. Take the rares that you got from Guilds of Ravnica and they're sitting around collecting dust, trade them in as store credit, and then boom, you can find yourself with a Ravnica Allegiance box coming in the mail or whatever it is that you happen to need. Check out Channel Fireball for all of your Magic needs. If you want to find us on social media, I'm Marshall_LR and Luis is LSV. We're on Twitter. We're kind of everywhere. And you can find everything related to the podcast, including old episodes of the show. In fact, every episode of the show and links to everything that we do. Luis streams. You can watch him play Magic live and interact with him there. We got a link to his stream on the front page of the show. Everything on lrcast.com. That's going to do it. Have fun at the pre-release. Let us know how you did. We'll see you next time.
All right, you mentioned you had something? Yes, no?
What do I have?
You said something about the soundboard?
You have the soundboard. I don't have a soundboard.
Oh, I thought you had some kind of plan.
No. I meant for future shows.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. I have no idea what the hell you want to do with your stupid soundboard. You can play your Benny Hill.
All right.
Yeah, you can just do that and we can be done.
I'll give people a tour of the soundboard at a later date, though I do have...
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
All right. I do have something that I thought was... that I did think was pretty funny to happen. So one of the things Twitter, we've extolled the virtues of Twitter, right? We've talked about how, you get to actually communicate with, pro Magic players who, if you were a Magic fan 10 years ago, you just would have no avenue to do that. Similarly, you can see, for better or for worse, celebrities and or political figures spout off on Twitter for, whether it's to their detriment or not. One thing that I've found is an actual nice upside of Twitter is a lot of companies are using Twitter to promote their brands. But the upside of that is sometimes you can get free stuff. And I mean, maybe you have to be Brian Killer for this to work. But I mentioned that our dog was not eating her dog food. And, all these people had different suggestions. You put chicken broth on it, peanut butter, leave it out there. She'll get hungry enough.
Yeah.
And Brian Kibler responded like, oh, we use this like service, like farm to table dog food. That's like dog food that's more expensive than most of the things we eat.
For Shiro?
Yes, for Shiro, his dog. And lo and behold, because he tagged them, their Twitter account, the company is like, because he mentioned something like, yeah, I should probably even be sponsored by them. I talk about them so often. And they responded like, Brian, we'd love to work something out. Send us a DM.
Really?
Yes.
Oh my God. They saw you two talking is like what, over 150,000 followers or some nonsense. Like they're like, whoa, we got two big hitters talking about our dog food. Wait, did you get some dog food?
I did not. Kibler is presumably working something out, but likewise, I mentioned that Giordano's Pizza just opened. It's this like pretty famous Chicago deep dish chain, opened here in Denver, but I mentioned they didn't deliver to us, just on Twitter, and Giordano's responded like, "Hey, we'd love to send you some pizza." Like,
really?
Yeah, so they're probably going to do that later this week.
So you can cash in your soul for pizza and dog food if you're willing to sell out on Twitter. Is that the lesson here?
Kind of the moral of the story. I do have some practical advice.
I am hungry,
and it does not require you having tons of followers either. One of the best ways to get a hold of companies also is Twitter. Like if you have a problem with like one of your flights, if you have a problem with some product you bought, companies are very active on Twitter, and the people who run the Twitter account, their job is to take complaints and make those people happy. So you often can get a good resolution by tweeting at whatever company you're having problems with, because it's also a public forum, and they know that a bad response can blow up. So
yeah, for sure.
Getting the free dog food plan, you might need to become a famous Hearthstone streamer first, but getting Delta to help fix your flight. I've had people, plenty of people, use that method with great success without having the fame that required.
Good to know. God.
Look, I just love this intro and outro. It's just for
Do I have to use this outro now?
I mean, it is for a podcast that's much cooler than ours, so I don't really know.
Two Cruising Guys podcast.
Yeah.